Finally, he met this evil god in a duel. He walked towards this event for 3 long years. Using all his strength and skill, he finally killed him. The knight lay exhausted on the ground and, swearing, said that he would never again want to repeat the path that he had walked. He heard some light ringing and raised his head. The goddess stood over him. She said it was good work and he looked tired. The knight was silent. The goddess asked why he was ignoring her. The warrior replied that she was saying this, although she could see perfectly well what a serious condition he was in. She truly is a stupid goddess. The girl noticed that he had really gone through a lot. He sat down with difficulty and said, turning to the goddess, that he had now completed everything that was required of him. She confirmed his words and said that the evil god Rionavilio was dead. At least he will not rise in the next couple of 1,000 years, and this world will slowly recover. Then the knight asked the goddess to send him back to his original world. The girl calmed him down and said that he would return to his world, and even to the same timeline. She looked at his doubting face and asked why he didn't trust her. As she promised, after he performed the return ritual at the place she sent him to, all he could do was wait for her to set everything up, so he shouldn't worry. Despite being transported to another world, he was able to survive these harsh conditions and defeat the demon lord along with the god Rionavilio. He restored peace and order to their lands. In the name of Valianes, one of the gods, she blesses and thanks him. The young man asked the goddess not to call him here again and to make sure that his work was not in vain. The girl replied that she could not guarantee anything but would monitor everything to the best of her ability. She warned the knight that this divine portal could close at any moment and it was advisable for him to warn others that he was okay. He realized that now he would need to say goodbye to the guys and finally return to his world. He went to his friends. A girl rushed to him and asked excitedly if Yuhia-sama was injured. She saw that he was covered in blood and said that they should cure him immediately. The young man calmed her down and said that everything was fine, he had already been cured. One of his knights asked if this was the end. Yuhia nodded his head and said that it was all over. The girl asked if this means that they are saved. Yuhia replied that if Valianes said the truth, then it is so. It's time for him to go outside and get applause. His colleagues and friends looked at him with admiration. They all raised their clenched fists in the air in gratitude. His name was Kashiwagi Yuuya, and in this world he was called Yuhia Kashagi. About 3 years ago, he was suddenly called here from Japan by a stupid goddess to a wasted world called Vilterias. He is an ordinary student. Today he will see the room in which he last lived. The girl sadly asked him, is he really coming back today? Yuhia confirmed her words and said that he was quite sad that he would not be able to see her, Tia and many others anymore. However, he fought desperately all this time to get back. Tia began to cry, hiding her face in her hands. Yuhia calmed the girl down as best he could, stroking her head with his hand. The girl could not believe that he was going back, no matter what. He asked her for forgiveness. Tia had no one left to call her family. Before they met, she lost her parents and other relatives due to an attack by zoomorph hunters. Moreover, she was captured and made a slave. They accidentally found her in captivity and rescued her. Since then, she has been constantly traveling with them. For her, they are something like a family that she was able to have once again, and now she will lose her again. However, he still belongs to his original world and his family is there. Tia desperately asked him to take her with him and promised to do whatever he wanted. She really asked for it. He again stroked her head like a little one, and at that time a maid entered the room and reported that everything was prepared for the ritual. She also sadly asked if he was really returning to his world. Yuhia replied that this was true. The maid, whose name was Eris, told the young man that he had never even touched her. Yuhia replied that it was not too late to do this. Eris asked him to give her just a minute or two of time, and they would quickly do one thing in this empty room. Yuhia laughed and said that this was definitely not the best request. Eris looked at Tia and said that she could join them too. But then it will take a little longer. Yuhia noticed that the ritual also took quite a long time, and it was time for him to go. Tia snorted indignantly and said that this was some kind of shame. Yuhia thought that Eris of course is a beautiful girl and has a great body, but she always makes fun of him in this topic. He, accompanied by 2 girls, went out into the courtyard where a guard of honor was lined up in his honor. His appearance was announced. He was called a hero who saved the world. Yuhia bowed to the important people who met him, but the woman with the crown on her head told him that he did not need to bow. He must stand proudly. It was Princess Melchiria. She asked the hero if he would like to stay in their lands. Yuhia noted that he had already answered this question many times. The king noticed that even Princess Melchiria had no influence on him. He suggested that it might be because her breasts are too small. Then they can give him Eris as well, since she's in good shape. The princess turned to Yuhia and said that although he is not from their world, they placed a huge burden on him and she deeply apologizes for it. And for the great things he did, they will be forever grateful to him. The young man waved his hands and said that he did not like it. The princess replied that she understood him and still believed that he could stay with them. At this time, Prince Leon approached him and said that he was thinking about Yuhia becoming his half-brother, and it seemed to him that it would be boring here without him. Yuhia thought with joy that it seemed like Prince Leon was on his side after all. After that he thanked everyone for everything. Bruno extended his hand and advised him to be careful. They've been through a lot, and he's glad they met. Another friend of Whisper told him to get out. He's not going to cry for a traitor like him. Yuhia realized that he was still angry at him, so he said that it was cool to hang out with him. Finally, the ceremony came to an end. Yuhia thanked everyone and wished them all the best. The princess asked the young man if he had any wishes before returning. Yuhia replied that he only has one wish, let them take care of Tia for his sake. The second princess asked him not to worry, this girl is already like a younger sister for Melchiria. They will take care of her. After this, the young man said goodbye and asked the girl to behave well. Through tears, the girl said that if he ever returns to them again, then he should definitely come to visit her. Yuhia returned to the goddess and apologized for the delay. She stated that this was nothing serious, they still had plenty of time for the ritual. She showed understanding of what he was feeling at that moment. The young man thanked her for her sensitivity. She said it was a little awkward to send him when he was so respected among them. Yuhia always knew that this girl was very cute. Meanwhile, she said that she returned him the clothes in which he got here, for which Yuhia sincerely thanked her. The goddess said they all know that they had no right to involve foreigners in their problems, but he did not take up arms against them. On the contrary, he began to help them. She will never forget his kindness. He saved their world, and she promises that they will preserve his property. Then the goddess looked tenderly into Yuhia's eyes and admitted that she had always dreamed of him becoming her husband. The young man thought that taking the princess as his wife would be too much for him. Besides, she had not shown any signs before. Probably, if she had said this earlier, something could have worked out. Meanwhile, the goddess informed him that it was time to begin the ritual. Yuhia stood on a special platform and the princess said that she had fun spending time with him. She advised him to take care of himself and not peek anymore. Yuhia blushed and realized that she knew about it after all. After this, the goddess cast a magic spell that was supposed to return him to the original world. In an instant, he found himself in a modern room with a familiar ceiling. Yuuya Kashiwaki remembered that he was sitting on a chair when he was summoned to that world. Just think, he was sent to another world in a sitting position. If someone saw him disappear and then reappear, it would be awkward. Thank God there's no one here. He picked up his smartphone, which was still lying on the table, and noticed the time, which corresponded to the time he was teleported. Yuuya hoped that he hadn't forgotten anything important. He looked at his backpack and thought that he might fail the exam. Does he remember people's names and faces? He even sees a smartphone for the first time in 3 years. He was most worried about his exams, but he didn't have any plans for today. He diligently wrote an SMS message and decided that it was time for him to return home. But first, he'll eat a ton of burgers and fries. He came back here for this. Yuuya went outside and headed to the student park, where a girl was waiting for him on a bench. She greeted him and asked if it looked like he was going home. Her name was Akane and Yuuya told her that they had not seen each other for a long time. Akane was surprised and said that they had met only 2 days ago. Yuuya was trembling all over and could barely restrain himself from killing her, because for him 3 years had passed since he had seen her. Akane Kudo was his girlfriend, whom he had known since middle school. They have different faculties, but they studied at the same university. She and Akane got along very well. The girl asked worriedly what happened to his expression. It seems different. Yuuya asked her not to invent too much. How could it have changed? Nothing happened to him after all. Akane shook her head doubtfully and asked if he got a girlfriend. Yuuya jokingly said that she guessed right. But the girl did not take the joke and said that this was impossible with his extensive experience of communicating with girls. Yuuya recalled that her experience was just as extensive as his. The girl objected and said that she could easily find a boyfriend if she wanted. Yuuya apologized and said it was time for him to go. Akane asked where he was going. He replied that he was going to eat burgers. He suddenly wanted to eat. Akane stated that she wanted one too. The girl, having learned that he was heading to the cafe at the station, said that she would take a seat. Akane quickly got on her motorcycle and rode off. Yuuya looked after her and thought, how and why did it come to this? The girl arrived at the place, turned off the engine, unfastened her helmet, and headed inside the cafe. After some time, Yuuya entered the establishment and the girl raised her hand, urging him to join her. She told the young man that he came on time, but she was sure that something was wrong with him. His energy has changed. He even walks differently. For some reason, his physique changed and his energy completely changed. Feeling awkward, Yuuya said that he had recently started lifting. Could the results already be noticeable? He thought about what isekai'd had said twice about energy. Then he looked into the girl's eyes and asked if she just fell in love with him. isekai'd asked what he was even talking about. She said he wants to drink cola through his eyes. Yuuya thought that you can't drink through your eyes. Suddenly, tears appeared in Yuuya's eyes. The girl worriedly asked him why he was crying. He replied that he had mustard in his eye. After lunch together, the young people said goodbye at the entrance to the cafe and rode off on their motorcycles in different directions. Yuuya reached his home, took off his helmet and looked around at the familiar building. This was his sweet old home, and nothing has changed. He went inside and found the house empty. Mom is at work, she has a night shift today, and father went abroad for work. It seems that he is in the Middle East now. He asked if Ayumi was home. No one answered. Yuuya walked into his room, which was dark. He automatically used light magic and realized that his skill had teleported into this world with him. The young man sat down on the sofa in confusion. Why can he use magic? Why can he use magic in this world? How? Could this have been preserved in him? Yuuya carefully checked his other skills related to the other world and came to the conclusion that he could use not only light magic. He still possessed the skills of fireball and wind magic. The young man was puzzled. Yuuya looked at the watch his father gave him in honor of his entrance into college. He decided to try his skill on them. Analysis. Using this magic, Yuuya easily found out that the wristwatch lying on the table in front of him was a fake, common in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. Water resistance can be reduced to 0 with a light blow. The most interesting thing was that the cost to purchase this watch was $800, and the cost of the item was only $12. His dad was famously deceived. Yuuya realized that absolutely all the skills acquired in the other world were safely teleported with him to his real world. He looked at the gift watch again and thought about how he had taken such careful care of it, but it turned out that it only cost 1,300 yen. The young man decided to look at his status. He looked at his card and shrugged his shoulders incomprehensibly. He didn't know what the standard stats were in this world, so he couldn't figure out how strong he was. But it is clear that he is not like everyone else, because he has magic and skills. And the consumption of magic points is the same as in that world. But this is reality. When he killed the evil god, he probably gained about 100 more levels. Yuuya opened the inventory window on his card and saw that he forgot to return the holy sword to the kingdom. He couldn't understand what was happening. Isn't that weird? According to the laws of cliché, his magic should have disappeared upon his return, and he had to forget about that world. Could this be a dream? He had to return to his old way of life, but before that he had to remember everything he had experienced in order to find out what was wrong. Yuuya concentrated. First, he was suddenly summoned to another world by Melchiria while he was sitting alone in a classroom. Then, the goddess Valianese came and complicated everything. She gifted him with tools, analysis, and understanding of language, and told him to go and save their world. Then she told him that when it was all over, she would bring him back. After that, she sent him to the kingdom of Arianas. He trained in magic and martial arts. Then, he defeated the demon along with his team, but it turned out that the main villain is the evil god Rianavilio, and the demon lord is just his servant. After overcoming many difficulties, they were able to defeat the evil god Rianavilio. After his triumph in the capital, he finally returned back to his world and is here now. Yuuya didn't understand anything at all. He assumed that the stupid goddess might have done something to him. Although it didn't matter anymore because he still wouldn't be able to find out. Everything would be fine if he had no magic left, but he has trained himself so much that they unknowingly use it here too. He just can't help but use something as convenient as magic. Yuuya turned the switch on the wall on and off several times thoughtfully. He decided that he would deal with all this later. Now he needed to think about how to hide his skills from others. At this time, Yuuya's sister Ayumi returned home and said that she was hungry and wanted to eat. My brother was just changing clothes and irritably asked her why she was barging in without knocking. Ayumi replied that she would only knock on his door when he found a girlfriend. The sister looked carefully at her brother and asked him why he was so strange. Was he really using something? Yuuya assured her that he didn't drink anything and promised to prepare lunch for her after he changed his clothes. He told her to go take a shower for now. Ayumi replied that she was already in the shower after the pool, and the young man then advised her to go to the living room. He was always afraid that he would reveal himself to her. The next day, Yuuya rode his motorcycle into the forest. He took the day off to test magic and things in a remote location. He simply could not go to school in this state and hoped that no one would see him here. The forest, after all, was deep in the mountains. Yuuya left the motorcycle in the clearing and headed up the mountain. He noticed that he did not feel tired at all while climbing such a steep mountain. Obviously, his steady state also remained the same as it was in the other world. He kicked the rock and saw that he had made a huge hole in it. Yuuya became convinced that he could do this without any effort. He thought with horror that he had obviously ceased to be human. Finally, he found a deserted place where he could begin the test. He cast a fire arrow spell and directed the power of magic into a huge boulder, which immediately fell apart into small pieces. In the same way, he tested the ice lance and water bullet, making sure that everything worked as before. He was even pleased with his work. He would be a little upset if he couldn't use it all, although it is believed that magic cannot be used on Earth due to the lack of magical energy in the atmosphere. However, these tests exceeded all his expectations. In the item window, he selected a sword, which, due to forgetfulness, Ariana's had not given to the kingdom, and was pleased to realize that he could also use items from his inventory without any problems. Although he did not think that they would ever be useful to him in this world. Yuuya thought for a moment. Things from another world, it even sounds strange. However, gems, ores, gold and silver coins that were preserved in inventory cells if sold could earn the young man a couple of billion yen. Surely, no one will guess anything if he sells them in small sizes. Yuuya turned his head and thought that he was not here for that. Finally, he used the call to magic and summoned Kager, the shadow wolf. At the last minute, Yuuya panicked. What has he done? He thought it was impossible here, but it looks like it worked. If anyone sees him, he's finished. A huge magical gray beast in the form of a wolf appeared in front of the young man. Yuuya Kashiwagi returned to the city and headed, accompanied by Akane, her friend Nana and sister Ayumi, to a cafe to have dinner. They witnessed a serious accident at a pedestrian crossing. A car hit a young girl and she lay motionless on the road. Yuuya ordered his sister and Nana to urgently call the police and an ambulance and sent Akane to check who was in the car that hit the pedestrian. He himself rushed to the victim. Yuuya used perception suppression magic to make it difficult for people who were focused on him to notice his presence. The young man noticed that numerous passers-by were filming the girl lying on the road instead of providing help and calling an ambulance with their phone cameras. He bent over the injured girl and realized that she was still breathing. Using magic, he determined that she had a skull fracture and damage to internal organs. It was bad, but it's good that her brain was unharmed. Yuuya thought that if he completely healed her, he would definitely raise questions about himself, so he decided to leave minor scratches and bruises on her. After this decision, he used healing magic. The girl moved. Yuuya calmed her down and asked her not to move until the doctors arrived. Yuuya rose to his feet and saw his sister and Nana looking for him. He realized that he needed to dispel the magic of perception suppression. Finally, Ayumi noticed him and reported that the ambulance was on the way. He thanked her and asked the girls to take care of the victim until the doctors arrived. Then he thought anxiously about Akane, who still had not appeared. What the hell was he thinking when he sent her to the intruder? At this time, Akane was talking with the driver of the car that hit the girl. The first thing he did was call someone and tell them that he had crashed his car. Akane told him to shut up. The girl he hit is seriously injured and can't even move, and he didn't even call an ambulance. Yuuya walked towards them. The intruder angrily asked the girl why she should care about this. At this time, Yuuya grabbed the intruder by the throat without further ado. The phone fell out of the driver's hands. Akane was surprised to see Yuuya easily lift the intruder off the ground. He asked him if he had anything to say in defense. He dangled his legs helplessly in the air. Akane asked the young man to stop lynching, clinging to his clothes. Finally, Yuuya let go of the driver, who collapsed on the pavement and coughed. Just at this time, an ambulance and police arrived and began investigating the accident. The dinner was great, but this incident on the road ruined everything. Ayumi, sitting on the back of a motorcycle, said that she just wanted to go home and rest. Yuuya added that a lot happened today. They said goodbye to Akane and Nana and hoped to see each other soon. When the brother and sister left, Akane waved after them and asked Nana if she had seen that light. The girl asked what light she meant. Akane replied that she was talking about the extraordinary light that appeared next to Yuuya when he was helping the wounded girl. Nana replied that she didn't see Yuuya at that moment because there were a lot of people around. Akane thought about it. Nana turned to her friend and asked, "Is Kashiwagi-kun really a cool guy?" She saw her hugging him. She'll probably be thinking about him all night today. Akane blushed. She protested vigorously. Everything was wrong and she didn't hug him. The friend shook her head knowingly and said that she didn't have to pretend. It's time for them to make love. Akane stated in despair that she had gotten it all wrong. Yuuya decided to make inquiries about the injured girl at the hospital. This was 2 days after that incident. The ambulance staff said she would recover soon. The girl was lucky and did not need hospitalization, but she will have to stay at home for at least a week before going back to school. And the guy who hit her was sober, so he got away with only losing his license. However, Yuuya placed a curse on him that causes him to get diarrhea every time he does bad things. He will live with this for the rest of his life, or until Yuuya lifts this curse. He found this curse in the archives of the Demon Lord, and now it came in handy. Yuuya opened the door and entered the cafe office. Manager Mizusaki greeted him and stated that he was early today. Yuuya replied that since his shift had not yet started, he would go learn the menu and the names of his colleagues. Mizusaki seemed pleased. She told the young man that he was very diligent, and she easily trusted the dining room in his reliable hands. From today on, Yuuya decided to spend his time here working part-time. After all, he hadn't been here for 3 whole years while he was saving another world. He, however, doubted whether he could work as required. The manager asked him why he wasn't wearing a shirt. Yuuya apologized and said that the previous shirt was too small for him and asked to give him another one, but larger. The manager rummaged through the closet and found him a new shirt. Handing over the clothes to the young man, she thought, was he always like this? Yuuya in turn believed that such a cute girl like Mizusaki-san would not be embarrassed by the fact that he would appear half naked in front of her. It turned out that this was too much for her. Finally, he started working as a waiter. Visitors and colleagues noticed that he was very responsible today. Yuuya handled his duties diligently but easily. It had been so long, and he wasn't sure how to cope. Fortunately, everything worked out. Maybe it was because he became stronger and he liked this job. At this time, one of the colleagues made a remark to one visitor who was talking very loudly. She asked him to speak more quietly so as not to disturb the other visitors. The young man answered rudely, "Is the Prime Minister really having lunch here?" He stated that he would speak as he wanted. Yuuya decided to intervene. He approached the client and said that if he did not listen, he would have to leave the establishment. This rude man called the young man a moron and said that he too was actually a visitor. Wasn't he taught that the customer is always right? Yuuya tried to politely reason with the tipsy client, but he continued to curse and threaten. Yuuya then turned to Magic in shock, after which he presented this rude person with a bill and asked him to leave. All the visitors expressed their gratitude to this brave waiter Kashiwagi-kun, and he accidentally used magic again. Manager Mizusaki asked the waitress if she was okay, who cried and said that it was all because of her. Yuuya noticed that it was getting wet here, so he should move away for a while. The girl was surprised and asked if he really wanted to change his pants. Yuuya said that he said it wrong. He meant that they spilled their drinks and he didn't get wet. The girl sighed with relief and said, "It means that this is not his puddle, although it's okay, they are all people." A couple of days after Yuuya returned to Japan, the strength and skills he gained in the other world have proven useful, but accidentally using magic, a hole in the ground and the like is definitely harming his psyche. Yuuya remembered the mountains and a huge cave in which a certain monster lived. He remembered Mr. Yuuya Kashogi, knight and hero. Yuuya Kashiwagi was preparing for his exams. Now he sat in front of the table and looked at the sword lying on it. When he was a hero in another world, the king gave him this holy sword. He was supposed to return it back before his return to Japan, but he completely forgot about it. Now that the demon king and the evil god have been defeated, the other world will be safe for a while, but there are still high-level demons there. In his world, this sword is unlikely to be of any use. He must return it, the time has come. Yuuya found a secluded place in the forest, although he was not at all sure whether she would agree, but there was still an opportunity to return this sword. He thought this would be a good place for it. He managed to prove this by using summoning magic and summoning a shadow wolf in his room. When he broke the contract with him, he was unable to return to another world on his own. Therefore, if he sent her back along with the holy sword, he could return it to the Ariana's kingdom. Although Yuuya felt a little nervous, he hoped that she would agree to it if he asked politely. He turned to summoning magic. Yuuya summoned Raylia. Magic lightning and fog rushed towards the place where Yuuya was casting the spell. The huge dragon Raylia appeared. Yuuya was again surprised by her power. He had not seen her for so long. The young man greeted her and apologized for calling her so suddenly. Raylia looked at him in surprise and said that she thought he had already returned back to his world. Something happened? Yuuya explained to her that he was already here in his original world. Raylia was surprised. Is this really the Japan he told her about? She didn't think that he would be able to summon her to his world. Yuuya was also surprised by this. Meanwhile, the dragoness said that she was glad to see him, but would prefer to get straight to the point. What did he want from her? After all, the gentleman didn't just call her. She's not against it though. Yuuya stated that he wanted to ask her something. He said there was one thing he forgot to return. He wants to ask her to send this thing back to the kingdom. Can she help him with this? Yuuya knew that Rylea usually avoided contact with people. They don't bother her at all. The kingdom is clearly not a place she would want to visit. Usually, a pet is tamed by showing its superiority and forcing it to agree to a contract. However, the terms of their agreement are slightly different. They signed it so that each of them would benefit from it. Therefore, Yuuya was a little afraid to ask Rylea for such a favor. Finally, the animal said that she didn't mind, but then he would have to help her too. Yuuya asked what she wanted. Rylea recalled that he told her many stories about his homeland. Now, she is finally here. She would also like to look at his world. Yuuya agreed, but only asked her not to look at him with those eyes. A bright circle of light formed around the dragon's head, and she unexpectedly turned into a beautiful girl. She ironically looked into Yuuya's eyes and said hello again. The young man looked at her breasts in embarrassment and asked her not to shake them. Rylea asked him again if he agreed to her terms. Yuuya asked her to follow him. Yuuya warned Rylea and said that she should not tell anyone about the other world because people here do not know about its existence. The cute dragon saw his motorcycle and found that this vehicle was very small compared to horses. But when she sat in the back seat and felt the speed, her joy knew no bounds. She was sincerely surprised at the smoothness and convenience of the roads in the city. She curiously turned her head in different directions, resting her great happiness against his back. She found the people here to be quite sophisticated. Even after his stories, she didn't expect this. Yuuya explained that although there is no magic in this world, they compensate for it with science. It may seem strange to her, but when he found himself in her world, he was just as surprised by magic. Yuuya took her to a cafe, and she admired the incredibly delicious food, especially the frozen parfait dessert. Rylea stated that she was ready to destroy an entire country for the sake of such a treat. Yuuya asked her not to do this. Then they sat at the table and talked. Yuuya sadly said that he was a poor student, so it was unlikely that he would be able to go abroad. Rylea expressed regret and asked why he didn't sell her scales or claws. The young man was indignant and said that he could not do this. The dragon asked, then where can she get more of this parfait? Yuuya said indignantly that she had already eaten 3 whole servings. After that he forcibly pulled her towards the exit. He told her that she had already had enough fun and he had lessons in the afternoon. The girl said that they would go to his institute together. Looking at the young man's dissatisfied face, she asked if guests weren't allowed there. If so, then she can go for a walk around the city alone. Yuuya thought deeply. He remembered the bill he had just paid for eating an incredible amount of dessert and said that he agreed, but she should not attract attention. When they approached the institute, Rylea was surprised at how huge the building was, like a citadel. Yuuya proudly replied that it could hold 2,000 people. The girl added thoughtfully, which means that the entire population of the city will come here. At the checkpoint, Yuuya was asked to show his pass. Only then did he realize that he had forgotten about the pass for Rylea. Suddenly, she pulled out a guild card and showed it to the controller. She thanked her and said that they welcome guests and let her feel at home. Yuuya was very surprised. They don't have such cards. Rylea matter-of-factly said that she used magic, so the controller saw what she wanted. Yuuya praised the dragon for a good job, and the girl at the entrance gave them a guest card. After that, the young man showed her where his class was. At this time, isekai'd greeted him, and was surprised that next to Yuuya was some unfamiliar girl with a sly smile on her face. Rylea unceremoniously asked Yuuya who this girl was. She's obviously the gentleman's girlfriend. Could he introduce them? isekai'd, hearing that an unfamiliar girl called Yuuya master, was shocked. Feeling embarrassed for being forced to lie, Yuuya told isekai'd who Leela-san, his father's acquaintance, was. She asked him to show him around the city while she was in Japan. The girl asked why then she called him master. Yuuya replied that Leela doesn't speak Japanese well, so they use outdated expressions. Rylea asked him if her Japanese was really that bad. isekai'd stated her name and said it was nice to meet you. She said that she had known Yuuya since a long time, but she never knew that he knew a girl as attractive as her. Rylea loudly exclaimed that the master often told her about isekai'd. So this is her? The girl smiled incredulously. The dragoness, with her characteristic frankness, said that Yuuya regretted that he and she had been inseparable since middle school. She is bad company for him. isekai'd was very upset by these words from her new friend. Yuuya, feeling awkward, said that it was already time to go to class. isekai'd grabbed his shoulder and said that she had always been interested in economics. Would you mind if she went with him? Yuuya asked her how she knew what his lesson was. Akane showed Leela the school, the cafeteria, and on the other side the school store. If you walk along this corridor, you can get into the classrooms. Yuuya realized that Akane was constantly talking to prevent him from talking to Raylia. Suddenly, student Akio turned to him and asked if he had a minute. He pulled him aside and asked him if he thought he should introduce him to that hot chick he came here with. Yuuya objected and said that he had a lot of work to do. However, Goshigawara Akio stated that she would not interfere with him. This guy was his senpai from the club, a third-year-old who was studying to become a lawyer. He suggested immediately exchanging phone numbers. Akio rode his motorcycle all the time and was nicknamed the fastest guy. Yuuya asked him, referring to phone numbers, if he was sure about this exchange. After all, he can stay for a second year again. Akio snapped and said that whoever said this, not him. Raylia asked Yuuya, pointing to the fast guy, is this another one of his acquaintances? He replied that this was Goshigawara from his circle. The dragon lady said that based on his appearance, he may seem like a superficial guy, but he is not bad. Yuuya introduced Akio to Layla and he immediately showered pleasantries, declaring that she was very beautiful and no girl could compare with her. Akane asked who he was comparing there. Akio quickly corrected himself and stated that she was beautiful too. At this time, Goshigawara was called out by an athletic guy who was accompanied by his friends. He said he looked like he was having fun. Do you mind if they join him? It was Ijima from the rugby club. Akio replied that this girl was just coming to check out the campus. She has nothing to do with them, let them go on playing their rugby. Ijima wasn't the type of guy to give up easily. He asked Akio if he really wanted to kiss his fist. After these words, he grabbed him tightly by the t-shirt. However, Yuuya asked Ijima to let his friend go and calm down, because it's the girl with him. The athlete turned to Yuuya, grabbed him by the clothes and declared that he too could help this girl, and he can move on. Yuuya thought that this guy was like a hamster protecting its territory. But a real hamster is much cuter. This is some kind of freak. What should he do? At this time, Raylia calmly said that it seemed like they were full of idiots. She casually grabbed Ijima's fat face and asked, what did he want to do to her master? Yuuya asked Layla to stop the violence and not make a big fuss. Layla let go of Ijima's reddened face and he thought that this girl looked like some kind of boss. His comrades asked Ijima if he was okay and he replied that he was in a lot of pain. Leela asked him to remember this lesson. His main message is that there is no need to be insolent. The rugby team, led by the captain, quickly disappeared at the end of the corridor. Akane couldn't understand what just happened. She asked Yuuya who really is this Layla-san. He replied that she was simply stronger than most people. After that, they said goodbye to the stunned Akio-senpai, telling him that it was time for them to leave. Following them, he continued to ask for Leela's number. And Yuuya Kashiapki thought that here's another guy who doesn't learn from mistakes. Yuuya planned to show Layla Japan and then return the holy sword, but he knew there would be problems, and so it happened. Both girls ended up with him in front of his house. Yuuya asked Layla if she really wanted to come to his house. She asked in surprise, what's not possible? Akane said why not, they weren't going to do anything wrong. In fact, the young man was embarrassed by the fact that Akane was also present. Leela insistently stated that after everything that had happened, she would like to meet his family. Then she quietly whispered in his ear that everything would be fine, and if something happened, she would use magic to fix everything. Soon they were already inside the house. There they were met by Ayumi with a poster in the form of a Japanese flag and the inscription welcome. Yuuya was very surprised and asked his sister who told her. She replied that she was corresponding with Akane and she said that she would bring one girl to them. When did she have time? Meanwhile, Ayumi revealed that she told her mom that they would have a guest. After that, they all went into the living room, where mother prepared them a very tasty dinner. Layla was especially happy about this. Then the girls took a bath. And we had a lot of fun there, playing with foam and water. At this time, Yuuya was preparing for his exams by reading a textbook, after which he fell fast asleep. As he fell asleep, he thought that he had somehow managed to survive in this mess. I wonder how Leela is doing. In order? Meanwhile, the girls were tormented by other questions. Akane decided to ask Leela directly. She plucked up her courage and asked what kind of relationship she had with Yuuya. The girl replied that between her and the master there is a connection that connects their souls, but this does not mean that they are in love. She also admitted that she likes Yuuya as a man. Ayumi asked curiously if she really liked her brother. Leela replied that if you choose between liking him or not, she will say that she likes him. But she cannot say what exactly they think about him. Ayumi asked Akane if this meant that Leela was her rival. Then Leela also asked Akane a question. She asked what her relationship with Yuuya was like. Blushing, she replied that they were friends and Ayumi, sighing, noted that this was a very ambiguous answer. Then Leela asked a more direct question. She asked the girl if they slept together. Akane muttered that they rode together, but it was on a motorcycle because she hoped he would ride her too. Then she declared, turning to Layla-san, that she knew nothing about her and wanted to find out what kind of person she was. Akane told Leela that she was a tough cookie and should take care of her. The dragon replied that she was also a tough nut to crack. While the girls were having a frank conversation, Yuuya tried to eavesdrop on them, leaning against the door. However, he heard nothing. Only fragments of the conversation reached him. Leela said that they had built a deep relationship over 3 years, and Akane asked her to elaborate on that. Yuuya did not sleep, nervously walked around the room and thought about what would happen if she said too much. He didn't want them to know anything they shouldn't know. Finally, he could not stand it, opened the door and told the girls that he had come to visit them. However, Yuuya encountered incredible aggression from all 3 girls. They told him to get lost and not disturb the girls' conversations. They advised him to go to bed. As he fell asleep, he thought that he must definitely return the holy sword. What was the lonely dragon named Rylea thinking and feeling? She felt someone calling her. Of course, the cases when someone came to her were very rare, and therefore dozing idle in the depths of the cave was the most common thing for her. 2 years ago, time passed as slowly as it does now. Then everything around returned to normal. But she was so sad that she was overshadowed. She left this place 2 years ago and only returned 2 months ago. For her, who can live for 1,000 years, it all seemed like a short dream. It all started when she met them. As usual, she was just relaxing in her cave, but suddenly 4 young guys walked in on her. She doesn't like people. They are greedy. They are always in conflict and they like to argue with each other. She then ordered them to get out or they would die. She certainly had no intention of killing them. However, if they decided to disturb her peace, she would do so without hesitation. These young people asked to lend them her power. One of the guys, whose name was Yuuya, said that they want to protect their country and the inhabitants of their lands from the Demon King. At first she refused. To her, both humanity and the Demon King are just people, and she had no intentions of interfering in people's disputes. Then Yuuya invited her to make a deal. He asked her to give him all kinds of tasks, or those that would require a lot of time, without hesitation, to give him to complete. If he can complete them, he has won. If not, then she won. If he loses, she can do whatever she wants to him. And if he wins, even if just a little, he would want her to lend them her power. The dragon laughed loudly and asked why wait so long, what is its purpose? He replied that the goddess Valiones had called him here from another world, so he just wanted to return home. Rylea said that in this case, he is just an outsider warrior to this world. Why doesn't he care? Since he just wants to come back, there are many other ways. Yuuya replied that he had a claim against the goddess who called him here. In fact, there are more than 1 or 2. But still, if he just ran away and abandoned the people he met in Valterias, he wouldn't be able to return home with a smile on his face. She agreed. Rylea asked Yuuya to show her his power by subduing her with the help of this power. If he succeeds, she will consider him her master and lend him power. His friends were dumbfounded by this task. How can you subdue a dragon? What nonsense! They asked Yuuya to make her another proposal. However, the young man pulled out his sword and asked the dragon to go easy on him. She didn't like people. However, when someone looks at her with such a confident gaze, she can't bring herself not to love him. This young man boldly rushed at the dragon. He was brave and persistent, and therefore he won. Although she did not swear allegiance to him, she promised to regard him as her temporary master. He was given an almost impossible task, to subdue the dragon by force. However, realizing the difference in strength between them, he never gave up and his willpower showed amazing growth. In this short period, his sword skills and his magic became much stronger. She wanted to see where this guy would end up. Or maybe it was because she sensed his inner fragility. Either way, she wondered what he would show her in the future. Layla, saying goodbye to Yuuya's family, said that she was grateful that they took care of her and she had a wonderful time with them. Akane was also glad that she was able to talk to her, and Ayumi invited Leela to come to them again. Yuuya breathed a sigh of relief. Rylea still managed to avoid any problems. They said goodbye, but it was all just a pretense. Because he summoned her from another world, she cannot return until he brings her back himself. They decided to meet on the mountain where he had summoned her earlier. Yuuya asked Rylea to use teleport magic in places where there are no people and not to stop at any restaurants along the way. Finally, he asked her to take care of herself. She responded in kind. After that, she unexpectedly hugged and kissed him. Yuuya was stunned. Did she do this as revenge on Akane? As she left, she waved and said that they would see each other again soon. Yuuya still couldn't understand why she kissed him. Akane walked up to him and said that he looked happy. Yuuya didn't answer and walked away. Ayumi shouted at him not to run away. But the young man was not going to listen to anyone. Now that Rylea had made a promise to her master, she could already fulfill his request. A few minutes before her return to the parallel world, for some reason she kissed Yuuya. Ayumi and isekai'd seemed to turn into demons and chased after him. When Yuuya and Rylea met in the agreed-upon deserted place, she asked if he didn't like her kiss. The young man replied that this was not so, but that was no longer important. He handed Rylea a box of her favorite delicacy, parfaits, which she really liked, and he ordered them to take out last night at his part-time job. The girl was delighted and again rushed to the owner, hugging him and kissing him. Gasping for breath, Yuuya believed that she was trying to kill him. Rylea asked why he didn't like the warm embrace of her breasts. He replied that he was suffocating. The girl decided that then she needed to compensate for this. Yuuya stopped her and said that she shouldn't do this. Most importantly, she must deliver the holy sword to its destination. Then he gave her souvenirs for the guys from the kingdom of Arianas, asking Rylea to give them to them. She told him not to worry and to rely on her. Yuuya expressed the hope that she will deliver all this to where it is needed. Rylea stated that after she handed them over to Melchiria and the others, they would have a tea party and remember him. After that, they said goodbye, and Yuuya sent Rylea back. But before that, the girl asked him if possible to call her here at least once a month. Yuuya agreed with her and said that he would miss her, and if she didn't mind, he would summon her again. Rylea drew his attention to the fact that he himself made the promise. The second princess of the kingdom Arianas, Melchiria Murat Arianas, sat at the table, sorting out documents. Then she decided to go out onto the balcony. Melchiria breathed in the fresh air with pleasure and paid attention to the pleasant breeze. She thought that if she did this every day, she would be able to finish a lot more work. Suddenly she noticed a flying dragon in the sky. She couldn't believe it. However, he landed right on the balcony. It was Rylea. When the dragoness took on human form, the first prince of the kingdom of Lion, Rides Arianas, admitted that he was amazed by her sudden visit. What's happened? Rylea answered with dignity that it was nothing special. She is here to fulfill the owner's request. She reminded the princess that 2 months had already passed. Melchiria agreed that a lot of time had passed, and she would help her with her request. The prince said goodbye to Melchiria, who can so easily speak with the black dragon himself, leaving the decision of all issues to her. It was too obvious and simple. Meanwhile, the princess asked Rylea what happened. Didn't she say that she would return to the mountains? The dragon reminded that she had already said earlier that she was here to fulfill the owner's request. After that, she returned the holy sword that the goddess had given to this country and explained that Yuuya simply forgot to return it, and she undertook to return it to its place. After that, Rylea casually threw the sword on the floor. Those present were very unhappy with this act, because the holy sword was the national treasure of the country. However, Melchiria did not seem to notice this. She asked the dragoness if she was really dating Yuhei-sama. The girl confirmed her guess and said that after returning to his home world, the owner called her again. He showed her a lot of interesting things in that world, and it was very cool. At this time, the maid Eris approached them, who was interested in Rylea's words about the young master. She greeted Rylea and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. The maid of the royal palace noticed that it was probably uncomfortable for them to talk while standing here. She suggested continuing the conversation in the garden, where she also invited Chiyu-san. Everyone agreed with this proposal after learning that Yuuya had prepared souvenirs for them as well. In the garden, the animal cat Tia greeted Rylea with tears in her eyes. The dragon hugged the girl and asked if she was okay. She replied that she was fine and expressed her happiness over Rylea-san's health. Then Rylea turned her attention to the princess. She asked her how much longer she was going to stare into space. Eris stated that if they left her like this, she would need some time to recover. Finally, Melchiria came out of her stupor and asked for forgiveness. Eris approached the princess and asked her if she had woken up. Melchiria asked the maid what happened to her. Although, more importantly, let her tell you about the slipper she hides behind her back. Eris pretended that she didn't understand what she was talking about. Melchiria asked Eris to forget about everything and turned to Rylea. She asked for more details about her meeting with Yuhei-sama. The dragoness agreed to tell them more details once they had tasted the souvenirs he handed over. After these words, Rylea treated them to parfait, known as the best dessert in the host's world. Everyone was delighted with the smell and wonderful appearance of this gift. Rylea suggested trying this dish. After they tasted the dessert, Eris stated that it would be great if they could make it in their kingdom. Rylea said that there are still portions for her brother and his majesty, but these two are quite busy, so they will not have free time to eat them. She suggested eating them ourselves before they spoiled. Everyone thought it was a great idea. Then Melchiria said, turning to Rylea, that she still found it hard to believe. Just think that it is possible to summon her from another world. Tia said that she would also like to be bound by a contract with the owner. Rylia replied that this was completely impossible. Of course, there is a chance that the owner has something unique, but most likely the goddess Valianese is pulling the strings. She doesn't know what's on her mind. The princess asked anxiously if the goddess had done something. But then she may be planning to use the master again. Rylia stated that she would not allow her to disturb the peaceful life of her owner. Although she is not at the god level, she has a lot of strength, and since their contract is not interrupted, she can tell if something happens to the owner. Melchiria asked her in excitement if there would be an opportunity for them to meet Yuhia-sama again. Rylia replied that most likely not. Hadn't she heard of this before? When someone summons a beast with which he has a contract, there have been cases where, along with the summoned beast, others will appear standing next to him. Moreover, the owner promised to summon her to his world once a month. The princess's eyes glowed with a special light. Eris told her that they would be able to see each other again. Melchiria became angry and asked the maid what she was talking about. She doesn't think about meeting Yuhei-sama at all. Eris retorted and asked who said she was talking about Yuha-sama. Rylia asked the princess, what's the point of saying this? Everyone already knows that she is in love with her owner. Melchiria blushed and protested weakly. Eris asked anxiously, what should she do with the princess? She always has her head in the clouds while working. When she thinks about Juha, sometimes she even grins. If Yuha-sama's name is mentioned in conversation, she becomes very worried. Rylia promised that as soon as the owner dealt with his affairs in his world, she would ask him to call all of them with her. Tia cried and said that she wanted to see him too. Rylia promised her that she would also go with her. The princess clasped her hands and said that she actually thought about Yuha-sama often. But what about her duties as a princess? Well, anyway, if it's Yuha-sama, then she's ready. Eris looked at the princess with pity and thought that she seemed to be unaware of her feelings. Teasing her would be quite useful, but she urged Melchiria to control herself. Yuuya gave his mother a necklace. He told her that he made it himself. Mom was surprised and said that this necklace looked quite expensive. Where did he learn this art? Yuuya replied that he learned this from the internet. The woman tried on the necklace and Yuuya said that it suited her very well. It was his first time doing something like this, and he was glad she liked it. After fighting for his life for 3 years in another world, he successfully returned to his home world. Therefore, I thought that now I would enjoy life to the fullest. But in this world, everything requires money. He really needed them. His salary from his temporary restaurant job didn't cover his expenses, and he still needs to attend college. Although he could use magic to make money. For example, make gold from ordinary stones. But he does not want to engage in illegal activities. After much thought, he decided that the last time he really regretted it was when he tried to use magic to pay. He thought that he could use alchemy to make handmade accessories and sell them online. He can use gold and silver from his inventory. He just has to be creative in using his magic. If he remembers correctly, Mom has been having pain in her shoulders and back lately. Yuuya held the necklace in his palm, filling it with magic. If he imbues an item with magic, it will give the effect to the wearer. But since the effect relies on absorbing the magic around the item, the accessory will not be as powerful as the magic itself. The decorations he makes for his family will have the desired effect on them. When Ayumi returned from school, her mother showed her the gift Yuuya had given her. The sister asked her brother where her gift was. Yuuya calmed her down and stated what he did for her too. Afterwards, he handed her a cute pendant with a toy puppy on a chain. The girl was very happy with the gift. Ayuma asked her brother why he suddenly decided to make jewelry. Yuuya replied that he thought it would be a good way to earn some money. He plans to sell them online. The sister said that she thought it would depend on how much he wanted to get for them, but she was still sure that people would buy them. Yuuya stated that he still hasn't created his page on the site. The sister offered to help, and Yuuya offered to share the income if she helped him. Ayumi was inspired by this proposal and encouraged him to go all out to make a web page and sell a lot of jewelry. Yuuya praised her for such an attitude, and her mother asked them not to forget about their studies. She warned the children that starting next week she would be leaving for work even earlier than usual. She told her son that she wanted to ask him something. Yuuya smiled and said that she wanted to ask him about his beloved son's bento delivery. He promised to bring it to the office. Ayumi told her mother that the necklace Yuuya gave her suits her very well. At Tokyo Central Hospital, surgical nurse Adachi Miyuki was experiencing discomfort from her stomach constantly rumbling. She was very worried that someone would hear it. As soon as she thought about it, a young man appeared in the office. It was Yuuya Kashiwagi. The girl said hello and asked what is this food for Boss Kashiwagi. He stated that he brought a bento as usual. Adachi replied that she was called to the medical office, but she thought she would be back soon. She asked the young man if he had accidentally prepared a little more food. Yuuya heard the sound of her belly. It was indeed loud. Yuuya replied that he only made simple dishes, but it was enough for 5 people, so she could enjoy it with everyone. The girl was very happy, and at that time Nurse Tahashi Ayoko entered the office. She asked what was going on here. Then she saw the young man and asked, apparently he came to give a bento. Another nurse, Aoyama Ren, came in response to the noise. It seemed like everyone in the hospital loved Yuyui-kun's homemade food. Aoyama said that they would try this food when Chief Kashiwagi returned. Then the young man invited them to look at the products that he had brought with him. He explained to the girls that he had only recently started making jewelry and he would like to hear their opinion about it. The medical workers found these accessories very cute and for a long time could not believe that he made it with his own hands. One of the girls remembered that the boss boasted about the new jewelry that Yuuya-kun gave her yesterday. The nurses said he was doing very well. However, they are so good that they don't even look like handmade. Yuuya allowed them to take what they liked. With great joy, the girls chose each accessory for themselves. Yuuya suddenly noticed a little girl watching them from behind the door. When they made eye contact with her, she quickly ran away. The girls continued to look at Yuuya's products. Adachi Miyuki, noticing the strange expression on the young man's face, asked what happened. Yuuya replied that he just saw a little girl who was watching them. The nurse stated that this must be the girl who was transferred from pediatrics to their department. Her name is Miyu-chan. She ran out of her room again. The young man asked if it was bad that she was taking a walk. Adachi said that she was only 10 years old and it was a little dangerous for her to walk alone. Then she said she would look after her. Adachi thanked Yuuya-kun again and left. Yuuya was walking along the corridor of the hospital when he saw through the window that girl Miya, who was sitting on a bench in the courtyard. He hurriedly approached her. She greeted quietly. Yuuya told her that the nurses were looking for her. She still doesn't want to go back to the ward. The girl asked him who he was. Yuuya replied that his mother works here as a nurse and her name is Kashiwagi. He told her that they had already met in the reception area. Yuuya told the girl that the nurses were worried about her and it was cold outside. Why shouldn't she go back to the room? The girl capriciously replied that she did not want to do this. Then the young man asked, how about something interesting? He asked the girl if he showed something interesting, would she return to the ward? Miyu nodded. Yuuya asked her to look at the tip of his index finger. Miyu complied with his request and was delighted to see fire miraculously appear above her finger. The girl watched with delight and surprise as Yuuya made fire with a snap of his fingers. She said it was very cool and asked him to tell me how he did it. However, the young man said that this was a secret. He thought that perhaps for her it looked like some kind of trick, although it was real magic. Miyu asked Yuuya to show her this trick again, but he noticed that it was already late and it was time for her to return for today. However, if Miyu-chan listens to the nurses, he will show her something even cooler. The girl promised that she would listen to the nurses, and she made him promise that he would keep his promise. Yuuya crossed his little fingers with her and gave her his word of honor. The next day, Yuuya was back in the hospital. The nurses greeted him and said that he had arrived just in time. The decorations he brought yesterday are behaving very strangely. Is it really true that he made them himself? The young man confirmed this and wondered if something bad had happened. Did something go wrong because he used materials from another world? Or is it because he messed up the filling? However, all his fears were in vain. The nurses enthusiastically began to thank him. One said she became very energetic when she started wearing her chosen accessory. The second boasted that the pain in her shoulders and back had gone away. Yuuya happily realized that things were working as they should, but he thought that something really terrible had happened. Adachi Miyuki asked the young man what was wrong with these decorations. Even her skin became smoother. Yuuya replied that they were made of ordinary silver, although he used a power crystal to make it. The girls asked if the power of crystals had any effects. Or maybe it's just that Yuyui-kun has some kind of supernatural powers. He replied that he wished that every bit of the things would bring good luck to the wearer when he made them. So it looks like his wishes are coming true. Everyone thought it was simply amazing. Then he asked the nurses where Miyu-chan was. Is it possible to find out where her room is? He was told that she was in room number 412. Does he need something from her? Yuuya replied that yesterday he showed her a small trick and promised that if she listened to the nurses, he would show her another one. Adachi said that she wondered why this girl became so obedient. It turns out that's why. She was quite a problem child and thanks to Yuuya for being an influence on her. The young man asked why she was transferred from pediatrics to the surgical department. The nurse replied that she couldn't tell about her condition, but she was initially in pediatrics. However, then she got into a fight with another child. Doctors were worried that this might have a negative impact on her mental health, so they transferred her here. At this time, someone called Adachi-san. She said goodbye to Yuuya and left. Yuuya thought and went to room number 412. When he approached the door, he saw a little boy there and asked what business he had with the man in this ward. Yuuya wanted to pet the child, but he broke free and ran away. The young man told him that he should not run away from him now. He took the boy by the hand and offered to talk for a while. Yuuya asked him again, what business does he have with Miya-chan? The boy called him an old man and said that it was none of his business. Yuuya replied that he was not an old man at all, but a college student. The boy continued to defy. Yuuya suggested that maybe Miyu-chan had a fight with him in pediatrics, and then he doesn't even know his name. Do you mind if he just calls him little boy? The boy thought about it and said his name Ikino Siyu. He admitted that he had said bad things to the girl. Zayu said that because Miyu-chan's parents are busy, they cannot visit her often, and therefore when the parents of other children came to them, she looked at them enviously, and sometimes she took out her anger on other children. For example, his mother brought him manga that he wanted to read. They also bring toys for the children, but she doesn't have them. One day he asked her if it was because she behaved this way that her parents did not come to visit her. After that, his mother became very angry with him, and he began to regret that he had said so. Then he wanted to apologize to her, but then he found out that she had been transferred to another department. He paused and admitted that in fact he had known for a long time where she had been transferred. Yuuya told Yu that he could help him. Then he picked him up and walked towards room 412. The boy tried to resist, but Yuuya did not listen to him. Then he knocked on the room and asked, "Is Miyu-chan here?" The girl was very happy and said that she had been waiting for him. Yuuya replied that he came as promised. However, someone came with him. After that, he pushed Zayu into the room. The boy hesitated a little and asked Miyu for an apology. It was clear from the expression on the girl's face that she had forgiven him. At this time, a woman entered the room and called the girl by name. Yuuya apologized for coming unannounced. He gave his name and said that his mother works here as a nurse. Then he introduced the boy Yu-kun, who got into a fight with Miyu in the pediatrics. He said that he wanted to apologize to her, so he took it with him. Well, he also came to fulfill the promise he made to the girl. The woman stated that she heard that Miyu had an argument with another child. And since it all started with Miyu-chan throwing things at the boy, she planned to apologize to him. She asked the girl if she had anything to say. She admitted that she was also at fault and apologized to Yu for throwing things at him. The woman looked at Yuuya and apologized for not introducing herself to him right away. She is Miyu's mother, Uno Ayako. The girl said that everything is fine now. She turned to Yuuya and said that she wanted to see his trick soon. The young man invited Yu-kun to stay a little. He also asked Uno-san to stay and watch as well. The woman agreed. The audience was ready to watch and Yuuya to show. Yuuya entertained them by snatching water balloons and fire out of the air and playing with them. Everyone was amazed by the beauty and skills of the young man. Nobody could figure out how he does it. Then Yuuya dramatically snapped his fingers and said that for his next trick he would need water. He poured some into a cup and cheerful bubbles rose above his palms. They flew up to the audience and burst funny in front of their faces. After that, he summoned paper birds that appeared out of nowhere. Then he asked the girl what her favorite animal was. She replied that this animal was a giant isopod, an idol of the deep ocean. Yuuya said that it seems Mr. Giant Isopod is on vacation today. Maybe there is another animal that she likes? Then the girl named the animal Naked Mole Rat. Uno Ayako suggested that her daughter choose a normal animal. Miyu thought for a second and said that it would be a pussy. Yuuya took out a bead and asked her to look at it carefully. After that, he covered the bead with a handkerchief. Then he swapped it with the item in his inventory and removed the scarf. In the palm of their hand, everyone saw a small cat on a chain. Miyu was delighted. After that, the young man gave this accessory to her. After which he did the same for Yu-kun and Uno-san. Everyone thanked him for such gifts, and Uno said that she could not take such a thing for nothing. Yuuya calmed her down and said that it was handmade and therefore not expensive. Then he advised them to carry these things with them so that they would always be nearby. Although if they still don't like it, they don't have to wear it. Miyu exclaimed joyfully that she and her mother would now be like each other. Yuuya thought that he made these decorations primarily for Miyu-chan. He does not have the power to cure her illness, but it will protect her from future illnesses, and if she wears it with her mother, she will feel less lonely. Uno Ayako looked at the young man with gratitude and expressed great gratitude for the attention to her daughter. Yuuya replied that he himself had fun. The woman stated that his show was more impressive than those she had seen on television. It's like he's a real professional. Yuuya wondered with alarm whether he had gone too far with using magic in front of people again. He told Uno that she was flattering him. but the woman assured that everything really looked incredible. The woman happily said that it was the first time she had seen her girl so joyful since the beginning of her illness. Yuuya thought that the anti-fatigue effect he placed in the room was working. She looked pretty tired when he first saw her, but now she looks more energetic. We can say that using magic in the modern world is cheating. But if his power can help others, why not use it? He hoped this would help her get better. Uno Ayako asked Yuuya to visit Mia again when she has surgery. She would be very happy about it. Yuuya replied that he would be glad if he could help. Preparations for secret actions were taking place in one of the secluded buildings. There were a lot of weapons in the room where the people were. One of the militants asked the other what was going on with the ambassador's schedule. He replied that everything was going according to plan as planned. He thought it would be easier because this country was drying out in peace, but it takes more effort than he thought. The leader said that their mission this time is very simple. They need to negotiate. This country has many allies in the Middle East and Africa. They cannot allow many casualties because it will tarnish their organization. Therefore, they should try to avoid unnecessary deaths. He was asked, does this mean it is possible to kill as long as it is necessary? The leader replied that the death of the cultists did not matter to them. The mission will begin tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the evening. Location: Tokyo Museum of Art. Their target is the country's ambassador and a high-ranking Japanese government official. Yuuya noticed with alarm that the little boy was in danger. He angered the armed terrorist by constantly crying. The bandit took the weapon at the ready and pointed it at the child. Yuuya rushed at the criminal and, snatching his weapon from him, rendered him unusable. After that, he struck him with a strong blow to the jaw, knocking him to the floor. The boy looked at the superhero with all his eyes. Yuuya patted him on the head and said that everything is fine now, and he's just great. He did a good job, young hero. The hostages looked with interest at the young man's suit and could not understand what was happening. Yuuya meanwhile turned to them and said that he had dealt with the terrorists on this floor and in the hall below. They can all safely go down and evacuate. He ordered them to immediately find the police as soon as they left the building and tell them everything they knew. The hostages headed towards the exit and the little boy waved to the hero. There was one last push left. Yuuya knew that there were 3 terrorists left on the floor and they were near the entrance. It looks like there were about 100 people on the second floor. He was sure that the diplomats targeted by the terrorists were also here. Taking control of such a large building with only so many people was foolhardy. It can be assumed that these people have an ace up their sleeve. Yuuya saw that there was a hostage and some kind of bag in the center. Yuuya summoned search magic. It was very convenient. With this skill, he could get a detailed picture thanks to the map in his head. He realized that there was a bomb in the bag. Yuuya realized that he couldn't continue to wait in the shelter without doing anything. The show must start now. He concentrated and rushed towards the terrorists who were holding the main hostage in the center of the room. The attack was unexpected for the bandits. Yuuya easily dealt with these 2 terrorists. The third turned out to be much more dexterous and quickly reacted to Yuuya's attack. He figured out faster than anyone that they had been attacked. Yuuya realized that out of all the terrorists he had fought today, this guy had the best reaction. This bandit pulled out a detonator from his pocket and said that since things had come to an extreme, he would activate the bomb. After that, he clicked the button several times. However, nothing happened. With a stupid expression on his face, the terrorist continued to press the button. Yuuya activated his magic, Spark. The terrorist twitched as if in a fever and fell dead to the floor. Yuuya approached the diplomat and asked if he was okay. The guards rushed towards him, but were unable to get to him because Yuuya had placed a barrier around the main hostage. Members of the security team advised the diplomat to step back. They somehow intended to protect him. One of the employees asked Yuuya who he was. The young man replied that he had eliminated all the terrorists and evacuated all the hostages from the lower floor. He advised security personnel to evacuate as well. The agent agreed and asked if he had really evacuated everyone. The hostages breathed a sigh of relief. They were finally saved. Many people looked at the hero's costume. Yuuya saw Ayum and Akane in the crowd. They were both fine. The hostages from the second floor moved in an organized manner towards the exit. On the way out, Yuuya saw police officers wearing protective masks and steel shields. These were guys from the special assault team of the Japanese police unit. They saw the immobilized terrorists and asked Yuuya if this was his work. After all, he doesn't look like a terrorist at all. Who is he? Yuuya replied that he had his own reasons for wanting to get rid of them. The chief policeman asked to tell him his name. The young man replied that, to be honest, judging by the fact that he is in a hero costume, they themselves will be able to guess who he is. By the way, he defused 2 bombs, one at the fountain inside the museum and the other at the bench. The policeman asked Yuuya if he could trust him. Where did he leave it? Yuuya pulled out a bomb from his bag. At the same time, a loud crash was heard. The police cleverly hid behind shields. However, the hero asked them not to worry. The bombs are protected by a barrier, and it also destroyed the detonator, so they won't explode anytime soon. He asked where he should leave her. The chief policeman was very surprised that this guy was talking about some kind of barrier. He asked him to wait a little. When the bombs were finally defused, the police officer thanked Yuuya for his cooperation. He apologized and asked him to go to the station to give evidence. Yuuya politely declined, saying that he had to go. After that, he instantly disappeared, and the police could not believe such magic. He disappeared into thin air like a ghost. The senior policeman was wondering how he could report this to his superiors. Yuuya was glad that he had wisely left a magic circle in Sato's house just in case, which helped him move instantly. It was a real hassle. Yuuya entered the apartment and saw that Sato was still sleeping. After all, not even an hour had passed since he fell asleep. The young man thought that he needed to hurry up and return everything as it was. He felt embarrassed about this. But he was glad that he could immediately get into the museum, thanks to this hero costume. He mentally thanked Sato. Yuuya thought that he was embarrassed, but if he thought about it, wouldn't this be another blemish on his history? The news was on TV, and a pretty reporter was lively talking about the terrorist attack and the appearance of a hero. Yuuya turned off the TV and decided it was time for him to go home and get a good night's sleep. Ayumi persistently knocked on the door of Yuuya's room and invited him to get out of bed. Yuuya thought about how hard it is when you have a shameful past. As he suspected, the reason he was in such a miserable state of mind was because of his cosplay of the incident during the exhibition last week. He took care of the terrorists, and Ayumi and Akane made it home safely. Yuuya thought this was the end. But he was wrong. He was very wrong. Now all the media write about it all day long. They make a big deal out of a mountain because of a mysterious man who appeared out of nowhere to defeat the terrorists. Typically, they leave the TV on in the background while someone is sitting in the living room. So he is doomed to watch these TV programs while he is being torn apart, and he has to keep a brick face the entire time. Every time he sees all this, he thinks that was it really necessary for him to open his coat and turn around like that after defeating them? Was it necessary to snap your fingers like that to remove the barrier? What was wrong with him? This is a real public execution. Yuuya thought that he needed a nice, narrow hole underground right now to hide in. It would be better if they just buried it. They would let him disappear for a couple of months. A whole week passed like this. Ayumi finally woke him up and said that food was already on the table. Then she looked closely at Yuuya and said that she thought that this cosplay dude looked too much like him. Are you sure he's not an undercover hero? Yuuya firmly rejected her guess. He told his sister that he was with Sato when all this happened, and moreover, he could not use magic and fly. Ayumi said that he is almost there, but he still needs about 10 years to become a wizard. Yuuya asked her to stop talking nonsense, or he would sue her. Ayumi shrugged and said that he never had a girlfriend after all. Yuuya said in despair that she couldn't behave like that with her brother. Yuuya glanced at his phone screen and realized that he had a call to Rylea scheduled for the day. After all, he promised to call her once a month to this world, and today just a month has passed since Rylea was here. At this time, his sister asked him what plans he had for today. Yuuya replied that Layla would come to them again today. The girl asked if she would stay with them here. Yuuya replied that most likely not. Ayumi thought about it, and her brother realized that he had again entered a minefield. Rylea was pleased that the owner did not forget about his promise. She was very glad that he called her into this world again. Yuuya asked her if she had delivered the holy sword to its destination. Rylea replied that she had carried out his order. Suddenly, a girl ran out from behind the dragoness and rushed into his arms. To Yuuya's surprise, it was Tia. She hugged him and couldn't believe that it was him, Yuuya. She was glad to see him again. The girl smelled his clothes and said that this was not a dream at all. This was the real smell of Mr. Yuuya. The young man asked Tia how she even ended up here. Then he looked at Rylea and asked if she was in the capital. She replied sternly that she was in her lair. Rylea said that when she returned the holy sword, she told Melchiria and Tia how she met him in another world. Tia came to her lair and insisted that she help meet Yuuya. The young man sighed resignedly and asked, "What should I do now?" He turned to Tia and said that he was pleased that she was thinking about him, but if she stayed here, problems would arise. Tia asked if she couldn't stay here. Yuuya replied that she could stay, but her ears and tail would give her away. There are no beast people in his world, so her appearance will cause a lot of noise, and she will need to be registered if she wants to live here. In general, then a lot of all sorts of paperwork awaits them. Although she can temporarily stay at their home. However, they can't just lock her there forever. Rylia was on Tia's side. She said that her magic would take care of her appearance and she wouldn't live here anyway. Yuuya agreed with her and said that everything was fine. The girl said that she did not want to cause problems for Mr. King Yuyu. She is happy just because she was able to see him again. Yuuya nodded and turned to Raylia. He asked if she could hide her ears and tail, and she herself must return to human form. Raylia, taking on human form, told Yuyu that he could count on her. Then she turned to Tia and said that after her magic she might feel strange in some places, but then she would get used to it. After that, she used magic. After a few minutes, Tia's tail and ears disappeared and she began to look like a normal person. Raylia rubbed the palms of her hands contentedly and said that it seemed like there should be no more problems. Tia was very pleased with her new ears. She happily said that they are now the same as theirs. Tia kept looking at the place where she used to have a tail, and Yuuya was happy about the cute appearance of this girl. Then he said that she needed to buy clothes. Tia drove a car for the first time in her life. She was amazed at how smoothly she glides along the road. Yuuya, Raylia, and Tia went to the city store to buy a dress for the girl. When she tried on the chosen item, Yuuya noticed that she began to look just like an ordinary girl from this world. The girl agreed with him and said that she felt safe in this dress and was very surprised at the softness and fineness of the fabric of the clothes of this world. When they were returning from the store in the car, Raylia said that the car differs from a motorcycle in that it does not shake so much. Tia said that if you compare it with a carriage from another world, the car seems to glide on the surface of the road. She never ceased to admire this miracle of technology. Tia was happy that she was able to wear a dress from Yuyui's world, and Raylia wanted to quickly get to the buffet to taste the food of his world. At the cafe, Raylia again ordered an incredible amount of her favorite dessert, which Tia also liked. The bill Yuuya paid left an unpleasant impression on him due to its amount. Before heading home, Yuuya consulted his girls one more time. He told them that they, Tia and Raylia, were half-sisters. On the way home, some problems arose, so Tia turned to Raylia for help, but due to some difficulties, she would not be able to live with Raylia for some time. In turn, Raylia came to him. This is all they should tell his family. The girls nodded understandingly, listening to his instructions. In the end, Raylia assured Yuuya that if they suspected anything, she would use magic. Let them leave it to her. Despite the dragoness's cheerful statement, Yuuya was a little nervous. He said he would take care of them if anything bad happened. Everything will be fine if they at least listen to their story. After that, they went into the house. Ayumi met them at the door. Yuuya said that Raylia and another girl, Tia, were with him. The sister clasped her hands. My brother has another girlfriend, and this time she is small. Her brother is a virgin with 2 beautiful girls. There's no way her brother could be that popular. Ayumi asked her brother not to talk about the fact that he kidnapped them. After that, she asked the guests to enter. Tia quietly asked Yuuya, pointing at Ayumi, "Who is this girl?" He replied that it was his sister. After dinner, Yuuya breathed a sigh of relief. He thought as he wiped the dishes in the kitchen that so far everything was going well. Only Ayumi is still sulking. The girls took a bath and started watching TV, and Yuuya brought them tea. After that, he sat down next to them and asked them to tell him everything. Raylia asked in surprise what he wanted to hear. The young man replied that he would like to know the reason why Tia came along with Raylia. Raylia replied that she had already told him that Tia had come to visit him. Yuuya shook his head doubtfully and asked, "Isn't there something else?" Then he turned to Tia and asked her about Melchiria. She might not have gone to Raylia without saying a word to her. He asked to tell the truth. Raylia sighed and said that Tia was here because Melchiria sent her. The young man asked in surprise why Mel told her to go here. Raylia answered seriously because she didn't want Tia to die. Yuuya wanted to know what she meant. Raylia lowered her gaze and said that the enemy country, the Vel's Empire, had declared war on them. Yuuya knew that the Vel's Empire was located to the west of the Aliana's kingdom, where he was summoned. Despite being a relatively young country, this nation has a strong army, even since the demons expanded their territory under the rule of the Demon Lord. This country was so greedy for new lands that it often clashed with other neighboring countries. But even so, during the campaign against the demons, they took a rather cooperative position. But not much time passed before the war against the demons ended. Tia reported that about 20 days ago, the Vel's Empire suddenly sent 60,000 soldiers to the western border of the Aliana's kingdom. They quickly captured the towns and villages around. As a result, the kingdom received a demand to capitulate. Of course, the kingdom refused and asked neighboring countries for help. But due to the recent war against demons, they were unable to gather even half of the empire's strength. Therefore, the Irvinia Empire and the Eastern Alliance of City-States advised the kingdom to evacuate. So Mel told Tia to go to Mistress Raylia. Yuuya understood everything. The aggressor declared war too quickly after the war against the demons. The damage this war caused was not small. If they really started 20 days ago, then they immediately prepared for it immediately after the end of the war against the demons. Or rather, they deliberately targeted at this time. There is a chance that they deliberately retained their power during the war against the demons. In that war where humanity could have died. Ryumiya, noticing the master's concern, asked him to calm down. She apologized and said that they understood that this was not a pleasant topic for him, so they did not want to tell him the truth from the very beginning. Yuuya looked thoughtfully into Raelia's eyes and asked if she could bring him back to Wisteria. She categorically said no. The young man said that he did not declare that he was going to go there, he only asked whether it was possible or not. Raelia asked anxiously what he was going to do after her answer. The situation is no longer what it was before. This time the war is between people and he shouldn't get involved in it. She understands perfectly well his concern for Melchiria and the others, but he must stay away from this. At this time, Ayumi entered the room. She asked in alarm what was going on here. Did they really have a fight? Yuuya replied that everything was fine and asked if his sister would like some tea. She thanked him, and at that time Raelia turned to her and asked her to influence her brother because he refused to sleep with her. Ayumi advised her not to even try this after all, he is a virgin asshole. Then she turned to Tia and asked her not to join them either. After that, the girls stayed to drink tea and Yuuya, upset, lay down on the bed in his room and thought deeply. This war between countries on the continent of Wisteria, it certainly does not concern people from another world like him. Or you could even say he is a complete outsider in this case. He knows this well. But he can't stop thinking about it. But again, he would again give up the life that he had given back to himself. To be honest, he didn't want to. He thought that he really hated this always doubting side of himself. Despite what he had told Raelia, he was sure that there was actually a way to return to that world. He is even willing to bet what is the reason why Tia came here. It is that she was in contact with Raelia during the summoning, so she was involved in the process. So as long as there is some kind of contact during the summoning, there must be a way to go back. The problem is how to send someone from this side. Last time he was called by the goddess and once his mission was completed, he was sent back with the help of the goddess's power. However, this time he wants to go of his own free will, so he cannot rely on her strength. He has to figure out how to do it himself. Although he already had an idea, but he needed to find out if it would work first. If it works, then the process will be started. In the morning, Yuuya woke up in a great mood. He played happily and energetically with the dog and frisbee. He stroked Elizabeth's smooth fur and praised her for her wonderful jump. Akane noticed that he was very energetic in the morning. Yuuya guessed that this was probably the result of his daily training. The girl said that she was actually training too. After all, she spares no effort in maintaining her figure. Elizabeth barked happily, demanding that Yuuya continue playing with her. Yuuya decided to join Akane and her beloved dog for a morning walk today. He often crossed paths with them during his morning runs, so they often went on such walks together. But today he had a clear goal. Akane was pleased that Yuuya often played with Elizabeth. However, she asked the young man about something else. Is Miss Raelia at his house again? Is he really sure that it's okay to leave his sister and this beautiful girl at home? Yuuya replied lightheartedly that Ayumi takes girls around the city, so everything is fine. After that, he began to play with Elizabeth. Akane remembered that they were supposed to visit her today, so she should go and buy some drinks for them. Yuuya looked at the dog and said that he would then buy her some jerky, but she should walk with him a little longer. Yuuya met up with Raelia and Tia at 2 o'clock at the playground. He apologized for calling them so late. Raelia replied that she didn't mind at all, but what did he want? Yuuya addressed both girls and declared that he wanted to return to Wisteria and intervene in the war between the Empire and the Kingdom. Everything is as Raelia said. It's true, something a stranger like him shouldn't meddle with, but there are many of his friends and people in the kingdom to whom he is in debt. He doesn't know what the Empire is planning, but he can't just abandon everyone. Raelia could not believe the seriousness of his intentions. She said that he went through a lot to return to this world, and now he wants to return to the battlefield. Moreover, how did he even pull himself together after that? Unless, of course, he plans to stay there forever. Yuuya replied that this was not the case and that he was going to return here, but only after he had finished the war. He has entrance exams next month and will need to get back here quickly. So the remaining 2 weeks will not be enough to fight the war, but he should at least have time to stop the imperial invasion. Raelia asked if he would change his mind. After all, she can go and settle the affairs of the kingdom for him. Then he won't have to personally intervene. It will be enough to destroy the army of the Empire, and the result will not be much different. Yuya replied that he was pleased that she was suggesting this and that he had thought about it too. But he wants to solve the problem personally. Just because he wants to participate doesn't mean he wants to fight. His desire comes from personal motives. However, Rylea couldn't understand how he was going to come back after this. He won't be able to ask the goddess for help this time. Yuya admitted that he actually has a plan. Tia was able to be here because they are connected to her. Then he will simply make a contract with an animal from that world and call it to this world. Akane has a big dog, and he tried to make a contract with her this morning. At night she is simply left on a wooden platform in the garden. He tried to summon her and see if she could teleport with him. Fortunately, everything went well. The girls were shocked. Tia stated that she just wants to be close to Mr. Yuya. Mrs. Dessa Melchiria and Sir Bruno remained in the kingdom, and there are other people there who are important to her. But if she had to choose between them and Mr. Yuya, she would choose Mr. Yuya. But if he wants to remember them, she would like to help them. Rylea spread her hands helplessly and said that the master was very stubborn. Let him do whatever he wants, she asked him when he planned to go. Yuya replied that it would be better to leave as soon as possible. Not even tomorrow, but better today. Immediately after he warns his mother and sister, he will go to the other side. A meeting was taking place in the camp of the royal troops. The first prince of the kingdom of Arianas, the great general Leon Redez Arianas, reported that it seems that they were able to predict the actions of the Imperials and surrounded them. The captain of the Royal Knights, General Regin, apologized and said that the army of the Empire was gathering in the west of the plain, and he believed that they were preparing to attack either tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. The vice-captain of the Order of the Royal Knights, Bruno, added that the army of the Empire numbered approximately 80,000 people, 20,000 heavy cavalry and 15,000 light infantry. A total of 40,000 infantry, the rest are archers or support fighters. Just at this time the adjutant entered the tent. He reported that General Vistas and Count Rance from the Holy Empire of Irvania, as well as people from the city-states of the Federation, had arrived. The prince told him to take them here. Soon the arrivals entered the tent, and Leon thanked them for their visit. General Vistas responded that if they didn't stop the Empire, they would be their next target. So it's no less important to them than it is to him. It is in their best interest to give the prince all the support they can. The representative of the Federation city-state agreed with the general. The situation is difficult for them. Although unfortunately they cannot provide a large number of soldiers, they all came here with an iron will. Leon stated that he was glad to hear this. He expressed confidence that together they could resist the Empire. He was sure that the battle would begin tomorrow. He asked everyone to go to the map and said that their army's plan was to attack the front while gradually retreating along the road. It would be nice if, in this way, they gradually reduced their numbers. The prince believed that they had no other choice. Regin warned that the difference in numbers was simply colossal, and they needed to make sure that the Imperial army did not surround them. Leon said it was too late to speculate on the difference in numbers. They can't escape the battle. He turned to all the generals and told them not to worry. They will be able to defeat them. Each of them will simply have to defeat 3. Compared to their battle with the evil god, now they have a good chance of winning. The head of the court magicians of the Holy Empire, Ivania Visper Rance, still said that even if it was possible, he would like to maintain an escape route for His Highness. Still, His Highness will have to lead the nation in the future. Honestly, it would be better if he left the battlefield when the situation became too dangerous. The prince urged not to worry about the kingdom. There is Melchiria in it, and the king is still in health. He is here to fight to the end, just like any other soldier. Rance was forced to agree with His Highness. Suddenly, a noise was heard at the entrance to the tent. The adjutant reported that he had spotted what looked like a flying magical beast approaching from the east. The military leaders could not understand what was happening. If this is the enemy, then why from the east? The adjutant explained that this beast is still far away, so they cannot see the details, but they are requesting permission to evacuate. The generals went out into the street and began to look at the approaching figure. They couldn't figure out what it was, a wyvern or a dragon. Leon ordered everyone to group and be careful. Suddenly he saw something in the sky and muttered in surprise that this dragon. Rylea, the beast landed heavily in the camp of the kingdom's troops. The prince saw those who were passengers and gasped. Yuya calmly said that he still had time. A little earlier, in Yuya's real world, his sister angrily asked him where he was going. After all, Rylea and the others just returned. The mother, looking thoughtfully at her son, asked if something had probably happened that he couldn't tell them about now. Will he be able to explain this after everything is settled? Yuya was actually returning to fight in the war against the Empire. Additionally, Rylea and Tia must both return to their home world due to what is happening there. He was going to explain to his family that although he was an outsider, he was aware of the situation. But obviously this shouldn't be done. Yuuya promised them that he would definitely tell them everything when the time came. Mom agreed with him and said that he was not a child, so he was free to decide what to do. As long as he doesn't disgrace his family, he can do whatever he wants. She just asked Yuuya when he would be back. The young man replied that obviously in a week. After all, he has an exam in a month, so he can't be away for too long. After that, he said goodbye to his family, and he and the girls went to a deserted place in the mountains to teleport. After some time, they all found themselves at Rylia's lair. The dragon sighed and said that it seemed they were able to return. She asked the owner what his plan was now. Yuuya replied that he did not know what the situation was now. Therefore, he is going to go to the capital of the kingdom of Arianas. However, he is not sure how he can get there. Rylia invited him to climb on her back and she would take him to the capital. The young man replied that it would be great, but was she sure? After all, this is a human war, and dragons are not interested in human conflicts. Rylia replied that she was simply helping her master, as she was obliged to do under her contract. She might scatter a few human troops in the process, but that's nothing of the sort. Yuuya thanked her and said that she would help him a lot. After that, she and Tia stepped onto the dragon's back. Rylia ordered them to hold tight. After that, she took to the air. Soon the buildings of the royal capital appeared below them. From a bird's eye view, they saw the fortress wall and people in the city going about their business. The dragon landed right in front of the castle. Soldiers immediately ran up to them, deciding that someone had entered the castle territory illegally. However, they were amazed to see a hero in front of them. Yuuya stated that he wanted to talk to the emperor and asked to report to him about him. The military promised that they would immediately inform the emperor and asked him to wait a little. Melchiria quickly entered the room where Yuuya was awaiting an audience. She, without hesitation, rushed into his arms. The princess couldn't believe that this was really Yuuya-san. She asked him if this was a dream. Yuuya said that they had not seen each other for a long time, but she was squeezing him too much in her arms. Yuuya asked her to put a little less pressure on him with her chest. Mel asked the young man directly whether he was really thinking about something vulgar now. At this time, Eris noticed that the princess acted rather boldly. She should not forget that there were still people next to her. Yuuya greeted her politely and said that he was pleased to meet her again. The maid replied that she didn't even think that they could meet again like this. That's why. She wants to ask him if this time they can pull off that little business they talked about before. Of course, she doesn't mind at all if he takes the princess first. Yuuya thought with annoyance that Alice shouldn't have asked him about this now. At this time, the hero was informed that the king was ready to receive him. Melchiria said that they would talk later, and now she herself would lead him to the throne room. When Yuuya, accompanied by Mel, entered the throne room, he saw King Arianas Arius leads Arianas and Queen Lefia Murdo Arianas greeting him there, who, together with the courtiers, greeted the hero. Yuuya bowed respectfully, and the queen said that it was not necessary. The king said that he would like to say that they had not seen each other for a long time, but in fact not much time had passed. He expressed happiness that Yuuya was fine. The young man apologized for not notifying them of his arrival. The king stated that he thought they would never meet again. Yuuya thanked the king for agreeing to meet with him, and he in turn replied that he was not so heartless as to refuse him such a thing. After exchanging pleasantries, the king asked him to tell him what brought him here. Yuuya replied that Rylia came to him in his world and he heard about a fool who almost did something stupid, so he thought that a little punishment would not hurt him. At war with the empire. He plans to take part too. The king said that he did not even know how to thank him for the help he provided. At this time, Minister of Internal Affairs Belrias entered the hall. Apologizing for being late, he said that this war was very important to them. Yuuya thought that this person was the second most important person in the kingdom after the prime minister, enjoying the trust of the king. For a nobleman, he is quite an honest and sincere person. He used his own funds to build shelters for children orphaned by the war. Belrias is not one to be greedy, but he has always been against the idea of someone from another world like him being involved in the important affairs of the kingdom. For obvious reasons, they always fought with each other whenever they met. Compared to their last meeting, there is something strange about him now. The minister stated that in the previous war against the evil god, they had no other choice due to Valianese Sama's revelations. But this time everything is different. He doesn't think it would be a good idea to bring someone from another world into this. The king noticed that he was still as stubborn as before. He told the minister that he should not think that the king did not understand his worries. But also, as he said, this war is very important for the kingdom. At this rate, they will suffer more and more losses. Not to mention the fact that this time the hero himself volunteered. Belrias tried to protest, but the king calmed him down. At this time Lady Barclay entered and very quickly approached the Home Secretary. She said there was something in his hair and wanted to fix his hair. The wig fell to the floor and Belrias illuminated the royal chambers with his bald head. Yuuya expected something like this from the Minister of Internal Affairs. He could easily master the magic of light. Yu, like 2 years ago, really didn't like this person. Then he placed a curse on him so that he would lose one hair every 100 steps. Yuuya returned to his world without lifting the curse. Belrias exclaimed in anger, pointing his finger at the young man, that he would not receive anything in return, even if he contributed to the war. The queen remarked to Yuuya that in any case, this means that Belrias is not against his entry into the war. The king said that for now, their kingdom Urbania and the Holy Empire with the alliance of cities and heroes had formed a united front. They must gather an army on the eastern side of the plain east of Fristal. Although there are no reports of a battle at the moment, he is confident that hostilities will begin in a few days. Arids turned to Yuuya and said that if everything suits him, then he officially asks for his help. The young man agreed and replied that he was going there immediately. Melchiria turned to His Majesty and asked his permission to go to war too. She stated that if Yuuya-sama was on their side, they would definitely be able to win. If she goes too, she is sure that she will be able to save at least a few lives. They also have a vice-captain of the Order of Chivalry, Reg, and a Duke of Rance. And also, Yuuya-sama, Tia and others are with her. Railia-sama. This will be the return of heroes. The soldiers will only be happy about this. The king said it was very good. After this, he formally approached Melchiria Murdo Arianes and ordered to help Yuuya Kashiwagi and join the army under Leon's command. Yuuya said that they would then leave as soon as Mel was ready. The princess replied that she would do her best and bring good news to the king. The king thanked everyone for their help in the last war and for their help in the current one and asked them to be careful. Leon, having recovered from the shock, said, turning to Yuuya, that he had no idea that they would meet again. He also did not believe that he would see Melchiria here. Meanwhile, Yuuya bowed to His Highness and said that he had a letter from the king. Leon quickly read it and said that of course he would like to ask Yuuya a lot, but the letter says that they want to join the battle. He thanked them for coming and said that it seemed that the strategy now needed to be reconsidered. He ordered Yuuya to follow him into the tent. Before starting the conversation, Leon clarified with Yuuya the fact that he was not against this meeting with him. He clarified the same question in relation to Tia and Railia. Yuuya replied that Railia was only here to help this time. His Highness thanked the young man and invited him to the table on which the map was laid out. Yuuya asked Leon to tell him about the strength of the enemy troops and the strength of their troops, as well as the means he plans to use. The prince said that at the moment the Empire had 20,000 heavy cavalry, 15,000 light cavalry and 40,000 infantry, including slaves. There are about 5,000 archers and support. In the end, there are about 80,000 people, but they don't know how many magicians they have. At the same time, there are about 20,000 people in the kingdom, 10,000 in the empire, and 5,000 in the League of Cities. Plus volunteers, consisting mainly of adventurers, number 3,000. As a result, only 38,000 people. Yuuya realized that in fact, the imperial army was twice as large. Even with this in mind, it will be difficult to maintain the gap. But everything is not as hopeless as he thought. However, complete certainty is still far away. Yuuya thought about it. It would be cool to use some kind of area of effect spell to kill all enemies with one hit like they do in light novel. Unfortunately, while he was here, his training focused on combat skills that allowed him to overcome obstacles and defeat the Demon Lord and the God of Evil. He has no effective skills against large numbers of enemies. This time, teamwork of all armies will be the key to victory. Leon said that if the reconnaissance team's report was to be believed, judging by the enemy's position and the outline of the battlefield, the enemy would march in a crescent formation, with light cavalry on the right side. Heavy cavalry and heavy infantry will move on the left, and behind them, according to his calculations, there will be support. He assumed that they wanted to fix their attention in the center using heavy cavalry, and while they were occupied with the center, the enemies would send the right side to attack from the flank. Then they will send the remaining infantry to the center. Then the left side will split their army into two. Yuuya, after carefully studying the map, agreed with Leon. Everything was clear. It was a good old tactic. Typically, the larger the army, the less flexible its strategy. On the other hand, some soldiers will remain idle, which will reduce the overall strength of the army. In theory, separating and destroying them would be the ideal choice, but with the size of the army, this is impossible. Once they captured the eastern edge of the battlefield, the enemy would have no choice but to resort to this formation. It's for the better. It looks like the preparation won't go to waste. Leon stated that they did not have any strategy for their army because they did not expect Yuuya to arrive. The prince looked into the young man's eyes and asked if he had any plan. He replied that with such a large gap in combat power, they needed to make the battle as fast as possible. Moreover, they need to keep losses to a minimum because they are still recovering from the last war. Leon looked at the hero carefully and said, "Is he really going to pull off this thing from Fort Gardas?" At one time, this fort caused them a lot of problems. Even if they pushed back the enemy's advance, they quickly regrouped at this fort in the narrow valley before they could launch a counterattack. Yuuya stated that he also has contracts with other monsters besides the Shadow Wolf and Raylia. One of them has the ability of the bravest animals in the area. Last time they used it to attack with hundreds of thousands of insects. Leon said that the hero Dono has magic that can destroy 10,000 demons. Because of this, the fort became almost useless. And not only this, that action frightened their army and the 15th part of it left them altogether. Yuuya replied that this was not magic at all, but the power of a summoned animal. He doesn't want to do this. They don't have time, and the place isn't good. The prince asked him if in a more suitable situation he could have used it. Yuuya asked who is in charge of the adventurers. He was told that this was a group of rank heroes whom they had left at the kingdom headquarters. Leon asked the hero if they should be called here. Yuuya wished to see them, and while they arrive, he intends to tell them about his plan. The young man opened the bag and said that first he wanted everyone to look at this. Leon agreed with Yuuya's plan. The hero said that in this way they would keep losses to a minimum, while defeating the enemy army. They objected to him and said that then most of the work would be entrusted to him and the adventurers, and besides, would they even have enough time for this? Leon suggested sending the magicians to the adventurers. If they started now, they could give the builders and earthbenders a break before the fight. The rest will depend on how well everything goes. Although this must be monitored first. The commander-in-chief said to Yuuya that if everything went according to his plan, they would be able to see the result of the battle without delay. The hero thanked the prince for his understanding. Yuuya then gave orders to his companions. He stated that Mel would help him and the adventurers. He gave Raylia responsibility for the right flank. He warned her that it was not necessary to kill everyone. Once the enemy loses his commander and takes enough damage, he will have to retreat. He left Tia with Raylia, ordering them to look for commanders from the air and inform them who should be attacked first. Raylia whispered to the hero that she could still go and kill everyone. Does he mind? Yuuya replied that this is a war between the kingdom and the empire after all. Not counting him, the former hero of the kingdom. This is a battle between people, so if dragons, who have nothing to do with it at all, also join the battle, it will cause problems in the future. He was asked, does this mean they should stay away as long as possible? Leon supported Yuuya. He said that even if they win with their power, the other country will simply attack them next. They must keep the death count to a minimum, but they must also give it their all. They themselves decided to devote themselves to battle, so their efforts will give them all or nothing. Even considering the above, this does not change their dire situation. They need to think things through carefully. At this time, a group of adventurers, Horn of the Minotaur, arrived. Yuuya thought that this name was a reference to the bull king Minos. So why the hell did the Minotaurs forget in this world, since there is no Greece here? Leon ordered the adventurers to be led into the tent. They entered and said they were here to answer their call. The warriors introduced themselves. These were the shield warrior Beanie Boon, the spearman Blue Moby Eurogermania, who could fight at close range, but usually specialized in magical support, and the leader of the Horns of the Minotaur, Erect Cock. Erect stated that he was surprised when he learned that the hero had returned. He turned to Yuuya and stated that he was honored to fight on the same side with him. Yuuya thought that they were all no good. All the names of these adventurers are puns from porno stuff, from a film for adult Americans. How could this even happen? Thank God this world is not Earth. Adventurers will play an extremely important role in this battle. At this time, they asked the hero to tell him about the plan. When they listened to Yuuya, Erect Cock said that this is truly something that only adventurers can handle. He assured Yuuya that they would handle this. The hero was glad to hear this, although he still did not like their names. Thank God he knew they were good people. Finally, troops from both sides took up their positions on the battlefield. Everything looked just as Leon had planned. Yuuya carefully examined his surroundings. There was no wind and everything was perfect for his plan. It was the middle of the day, but the sun was not visible because of the clouds. He never would have thought that everything could turn out so perfectly. Right now they are south of the Empire's army. They hiding their mana. From their position they had a good view of the entire Imperial army. It looked like they weren't very active on the flanks that were visible to the royal army. Not like in areas invisible to them. Yuuya decided that they would finish their preparations today, and everything would start tomorrow morning. They should have already noticed that the United Army had completed its preparations. This will encourage them to pick up the pace. Naturally, this is all their merit. They cannot wait for the enemy to prepare, considering that they are already ready. And this will distract them from the secret plan. Rylea looked around the future battlefield with a smile and said that they would begin soon. Yuuya nodded his head and asked Melchiria if she was ready. The girl replied that she was always ready. Yuuya noticed that everything was going according to plan. He reminded Rylea and Tia that they would go with the light cavalry on the right flank. Then he added with a smile that for the sake of his plan, he grabbed a couple of things from Japan. The most important thing was his faithful steed, a motorcycle, and a couple of other necessary things, as well as the most basic things. Even buying everything cheaply, he spent a lot. Most of the stash was probably spent on a motorized horse. He thought that if all this did not help, then it would be a big loss. Too big. This is a huge waste of money. Yuuya got behind the wheel of the motorcycle, and Mel sat behind. All the vicissitudes of the meeting with Leon to discuss the plan for the decisive battle were captured in the hero's memory with cinematic clarity. The sound of drums sounded, calling the knights to begin their attack. Rance turned to Prince Leon and said that now was not the time to be nervous. The hero helps them, they shouldn't worry too much, they need to think about what he will do after the victory. Leon replied that he did not think at all that they would lose. The prince said to Rance that he can see how much he trusts Yuyu, but he can't believe that he agreed to this battle without his plan. Rance replied that the prince knew his bad character. The Empire's cavalry went on the attack. The royal troops waited. Yuuya, the motorcycle driver, thought that if the Imperial heavy cavalry moved, their allied forces would stop. This is a pre-arranged action. If both armies move towards each other, then their collision will happen in just a few minutes. In an effort to avoid this, their army stopped to extend the time of silence. And now it was time for her and Mel to leave. Racing across the field on a motorcycle, they noticed that the cavalry of both troops had begun to move. Yuuya put up a barrier and directed the car straight into the midst of the cavalry and gave the command to Mel. The girl began to pull out fireworks and firecrackers from the box that was on her lap, throwing them under the horses' hooves. The frightened animals were in a panic. The cavalry formation was broken, and there was no possibility of restoring it. Enemy commanders could not understand what was happening. Many riders were thrown off their horses, which fled in panic around the area. Melchiria rejoiced. Everything turned out just as he and Yuuya had planned. The heavy cavalry was scattered. Yuuya looked around carefully. Even under the barrier, driving into the thick of the battle, he would hardly be able to destroy a significant part of the army. If we take it in numbers, then this is a maximum of 10 at a time. It's useless for battle. However, a very useful thing from his world came to his aid. He blew up the 30 boxes of fireworks that Mel had given him in advance. Of course, this does not particularly affect the soldiers, because fireworks do not cause them significant harm. However, the horses of this world are much larger in size than those known to him. Even though they undergo special training, their behavior and food preferences are identical. And all this means that, like any herbivore, they have the ability to be cowardly. They were taught not to be afraid of magic and sharp objects, but they are not accustomed to such loud sounds and blinding light. Also, do not forget that horses are herd animals. Panic in the herd spreads to everyone at once. As a result, at least several dozen heavy cavalrymen will inevitably break formation, and having received this moment, their allied troops will take the enemy by surprise. Yuuya was pleased. He shouted at Mel to keep it up. At this time, the Imperial commander of the left wing entered the scene. Seeing this, Erect Cock, the leader of the adventurers of the Horn of the Minotaur party, called on his fighters to follow him and give an appropriate rebuff to the enemy. At this time, the magicians also entered the battle. They also disrupted the attacking formations with the help of magic spells, blinding the warriors and dousing them with boiling water. Continuing to crash into the cavalry formation on his motorcycle, Yuuya told Melchiria that the adventurer's work had exceeded his expectations. The Imperials have no chance to break through their troops. The girl suddenly saw the wounded royal fighters and asked Yuuya to drop her off so she could help them. The young man fulfilled her request. Melchiria called upon healing magic to help the wounded. The soldiers were very pleased. They admired the princess's strength, which could restore not only physical wounds, but also the morale of the warriors. Melchiria stated that she would help as many as her strength would support. They can rely on her. At this time, Rylea and Tia watched the battle from ambush. Rylea said that they would be leaving soon. She asked Tia if she was ready. The girl replied that she didn't need to prepare much, they could start at any moment. Rylea asked the girl to calm down because they were starting right now. Tia replied that she was simply glad that she could be useful to her kingdom. Rylea knew that when Tia was very young, her parents were killed, and she herself was made a slave, so her feelings were understandable. Tia was a slave in the same empire, her thirst for battle can be understood. But it seemed to her that her desire to help Yu as well as her still played a big role. Rylea announced that they were starting and immediately took the form of a huge dragon. The enemy commanders were very surprised. They couldn't understand where the dragon came from here. The commanders ordered their soldiers not to stand still but to shoot at the flying dragon. The archers opened fire and Tia, sitting on Rylea's back, asked her if everything was okay. The dragon calmed the girl and said that these were just arrows. Tia looked down carefully, trying to find the commander among the enemies. She saw how everyone obeyed one officer who ordered the shooters to distract the dragon and the rest to head towards the royal troops. Tia informed Rylea that she had found a target that needed to be destroyed first. The Imperial infantry looked in surprise at the approaching dragon. Tia asked Rylea to give her the Molotov cocktail. After she got what she wanted, Tia threw her down. The shell hit the target and the girl clapped her hands. She exclaimed that this is what she told Mr. Yuuya-san. One blow and everything is on fire. He gave her this weapon. I think it's called kimping. If you need to burn someone, it will be faster if you throw him into the middle of the Imperial army. Now they were trapped. Tia, preparing the next bottle, said that when everything is quick and easy, it's just wonderful. It's great to watch your enemies burn in agony. She called on Rylea to make another circle over the Imperial army, and the dragon noticed that she was somehow completely cruel. Meanwhile, Leon watched the progress of the fighting through a telescope. He saw that the heroes would soon reach the center of the Imperial army. He turned towards his position and ordered the first and second lines to charge. The royal army launched a counteroffensive. Leon saw the light of fireworks in the distance. At the strategy meeting, Yuuya showed it to him. When they tried otherworldly projectiles, they found that the sound and sparks were effective enough to shock heavy cavalry and stop them. The fireworks will allow their cavalry and infantry to strike the Imperial forces, which will be stopped by them. This is the main battlefield in this operation, and their infantry will not remain in place. Therefore, she does not engage cavalry to make it easier to avoid damage. They only attack stopped cavalry. And then of course the heavy cavalry of the Imperial Guard will move towards them. That's what they are here for. The Imperial cavalry will occupy the first point. Finally, the time has come. Leon thought that if it weren't for the chainsaw that Julia brought with him, he would not have been able to perform this maneuver. Using a tool from another world, they were able to quickly prepare special sharp stakes, which they placed in the path of the enemy cavalry. The Imperial horsemen did not believe that any stakes could block their path. They rushed to attack. However, they soon found themselves in a cunning trap. Invisible threads were stretched between the stakes, which played a cruel joke on the cavalry. Some did not believe in the seriousness of this enterprise and believed that it was a children's trick. However, with the help of the first point of Operation Wire, the king's army managed to block the advance of the Imperial heavy cavalry. Operational Wire is a concept that Leon and his generals had to learn. Using the chainsaw that the hero took with him, he created a contradiction. To do this, a strong rope called wire was stretched between the stakes, which Yuuya also provided. The wire was stretched at a height of 2 meters. The knight crashed in at speed without noticing it, but the wire was not installed on every stake. The Imperial troops noticed this and ran to the stakes where the wire was not installed. But in fact there was a wire there, which was darkened and difficult to distinguish. However, if you see it enough times, you will get used to it and will already know where it is. Leon looked carefully through the telescope and realized that the head of the Imperial Guard was about to reach the second point. At the second mark, another trap awaited the enemy. The cavalry horses fell into dug and camouflaged pits. Leon watched with admiration the implementation of the hero's plan. He turned to Rance and said that he didn't expect Yuuya's plan to work so well. Minimize losses on friendly sides while inflicting maximum damage on the enemy. This strategy is very close to ideal. It means, when faced with various difficulties and cruel enemies, to inspire the people, lead the fight and win the war. This image of heroism was present in himself. In fact, in the fight against the army of the Demon King and the forces of the evil gods, Yuuya took the leading role. Leon added that he was sure that he had demonstrated his lion's prowess even then. The way he fought this time was a little different from the image he had imagined such a hero would fight. Rance replied that if you look closely at the content, you can see that it is truly outstanding. And although he knows that now is not a situation where he can say something extravagant, this does not at all seem like a brave person. Always create a situation in which you have the advantage, preventing your enemies from showing their true potential and luring them into a trap. He wouldn't call it heroism either. This is truly a terrible strategy. He has a very bad character. He turned to the prince and said that he would see how unkind Yuuya was. During his battle with the Demon King, he spoke to his opponent to get his attention and prepared his magic. He then made him lose his composure before casting the spell. After the Demon King lost interest in magic, they all hit him with projectiles from a distance. Even if they had no choice but to fight him head-on, he would still ensure a confident and safe victory. He will try to win, even if he has to resort to dirty tricks. Then, as soon as he is in front of him, he is finished. Leon inhaled and noted that this was the nature of war. Rance agreed with him, and the prince thanked him for this conversation. At this time, observers noticed that the Imperial Guard began to form 300 meters from the positions of the royal army. Leon asked Sir Rance if he was ready. Rance replied that everything was ready and that he should not worry. The enemies were surprised by the extraordinary structures that appeared in front of them. One of the knights suggested that they might lose too many people. Leon ordered to march, and at this time Yuuya continued to attack the enemy cavalry on his motorcycle. Finally, he reached the center. As expected, there were many soldiers around the main camp. Their number was more than twice that of the kingdom's soldiers. Yuuya realized that it would take a long time, even if they used barriers to keep them out. Even if the impact of the barrier is barely transmitted by the motorcycle when it bounces off hundreds or thousands of soldiers, there may still be a slight deflection of the momentum. This robs the bike of some dynamics. He can open the throttle to regain momentum. The impulse, which rushed at a speed of more than 100 km/h, is now only 50. Yuuya realized that he wanted a big motorcycle. He had to learn the shortcomings of the average motorcycle on the battlefield. What he meant was that he wants to ride a motorcycle regardless of whether he is from this world or another. He thought that it was useless to think about it now, so he should put it all aside and continue attacking the enemy. Suddenly, Yuuya noticed the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Army. He was in a cart and commanded an army. This was the main goal. He pointed the motorcycle in his direction, but the figure of a huge knight appeared on his way. Yuuya had seen this guy before. He felt like the man was a warlord or something like that. The knight rushed at him, and they found themselves alone with swords at the ready. This man looked into Yuuya's eyes and exclaimed, "Is this really a hero? Didn't he return to his world?" Yuuya held his sword in front of him and stated that it was obvious that the garbage collection was only half done. He had to come back. The opponent's swords connected, lighting up the place of the duel with sparks. The knight exclaimed, turning to the hero, that he had destroyed the magic circle of summoning. How did he get here? Yuuya thought that he didn't know that he did it. It's still pointless. Who would bother to answer such a question? Yuuya swung his sword, completing his diversionary strike. At the same time, he fired a tear gas canister, blinding the enemy. The knight accused him of cowardice, to which the hero replied that they unexpectedly attacked them with a huge army, so it was not for him to talk about cowardice and stupidity. After this, Yuuya dealt the decisive blow. The guy ended up on the ground. The warriors saw that their general was defeated. Yuuya's gaze was now fixed on the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Army. He asked what he wanted to do. How far is he going to go? The hero climbed onto the cart and drew his sword. He asked the commander-in-chief, "Is he in charge here?" The commander-in-chief began to threaten Yuuya, promising that he would not get away with this. He said that he was the crown prince of the empire, but Yuuya decided that he was taking on too much. Killing the commander would be his last step, but he decided to take him to the main allied camp and leave everything to his highness. He couldn't make political decisions, but he could have used it instead of just removing it. Yuuya thought that if everything continued to go according to plan, then this battle would be over. Leon, looking at the results of the battle, said that it was great. How could the knights die within seconds of entering this space? He turned to Rance and said that the military council had said that it was not poison. What does it mean? He didn't remember everything he was taught. Rance replied that his highness must know what a person needs to breathe. This is air, but the main thing is a certain concentration of one or another component in the air, which is exactly what a person needs to breathe. It is believed that this is the same ingredient needed in combustion. Its concentration cannot be too thick, not too liquid. So this time the ingredient is removed from the air and the wind is blown into the space magically blocked on both sides and above, and then the air is released into the same space. The amount of ingredients in the space has been reduced to an extremely low level. Leon asked if in that brief moment when the Imperial Guards were approaching them they had noticed that something was wrong and held their breath. Wouldn't it have mattered? These knights are better trained than most others. Rance replied that they could hold their breath and continue moving for a few minutes, but if they were breathing air extremely diluted with necessary elements, they would pass out after 1 or 2 breaths. This applies not only to humans, but also to animals, demons, and everything else, to everything that breathes. Leon admitted that he did not understand all the details of his explanation. Rance replied that it would be helpful if he simply assumed that was the case. It would be problematic to spread this magic to the general public. Leon agreed that this was true. Deadly magic that cannot be detected in advance is too dangerous. Maybe they should keep it a secret. At this time, Yuuya approached them. Leon asked him how it went. The hero replied that everything went without a hitch, and he also expressed confidence that Rylea and the others did it too. Suddenly, the sounds of army signals were heard in the air. Tia, who was returning with Rylea, said that it seems that Yuuya-sama has defeated the Imperial General. She heard a signal indicating an order for the Imperial Army to retreat. Leon sighed with relief and said that they had won. The prince ordered the wounded to be treated quickly and the infantry to capture the remaining Imperial Guardsmen. He ordered light cavalry to patrol the area and engineers to prepare the camp. Yuuya thought that there was nothing he could do at the moment. He's just checking out the area. He can help with the rescue, but if he leaves, the atmosphere will become a little unpleasant. In any case, this war with the Empire is over. It can be considered that for now the immediate threat has passed, but the Imperial Army has not been destroyed, so this is temporary. His thoughts were interrupted by Rylea and Tia returning. Tia cheerfully greeted the hero and asked if he was injured. The young man replied that he was fine. Rylea said that no one would harm them after such a thrashing. Yuuya thanked the girls for their help and said that the right wing of the Imperial Army was left to the two of them. They handled it well. Rylea asked the master what will they do now. Their current task should be a piece of cake. Yuuya replied that it would be after they all returned home. At first he suggested that they rest for a while, and Tia said that they should wait for the others to return. Leon then invited them into the tent and thanked everyone for their hard work. Thanks to them, they successfully defeated the Imperial Guard, and on behalf of the area's kingdom, he expressed his heartfelt gratitude to them for this. Then he proceeded to announce the losses they suffered in the battle. 1,253 warriors were killed. 895 were seriously injured. 382 and 198 dead and wounded from the kingdom, 291 and 113 from the Empire, 136 and 78 from the Confederation of City-States. Adventurers and volunteers, 447 and 506. Yuuya thought that the casualty rate of adventurers was extremely high. Even though Mel had made full use of her healing magic in the middle of the battle, many adventurers must have scattered without even being able to retreat. This is not surprising, since they fought the battle against heavily armed cavalrymen without taking a single step back. Even if this is a war, the fact that so many of their allies died as a result of the plan he proposed is sobering. Leon continued the meeting. He said he wanted to make the Empire's losses public. The heavy cavalry lost about 12,000 killed and 3,000 captured. The light cavalry lost 10,000. The infantry lost 6,000, 2,000 were captured and 15,000 fled. Almost all of the fleeing infantrymen were warriors. 12 of them had just surrendered, asking for protection. Leon stated that other casualties were estimated at around 3,000, for a total of 31,000 dead and 5,000 prisoners of war. Including those who escaped, that's about 30,000 of the 80,000 Imperial troops who managed to retreat. He does not know what the casualty numbers are. They estimate the number of Imperial troops stationed in Prestel to be around 10,000, most likely infantry. This is less than half the entire army in one battle. Leon noted that this was indeed a victory, and he never thought that they would be able to achieve such a great victory. He said that this was all thanks to the hero's strategy and work done, as well as the power of Lady Rylea. Rand said with a displeased expression that they were lucky to have won this battle, but they were by no means unscathed, and given that the remnants of the Imperial army were sitting in Fristel, the damage should have been great. General Regin agreed with him. He stated that Fristel, the kingdom's territory, was still in the hands of the Imperial Guard. This is not like the battle on the plains, where the inhabitants of the upper cities are held hostage. Unlike the war we experienced, this one will not be easy. Yuuya thought that both of these generals had read his thoughts and pushed him into conversation well. He's glad they've known each other long enough for them to understand how he thinks. He doesn't appreciate praise when there are more than 4,000 casualties on their part. Not that he regretted this mission. He simply feels that the whole burden of life has fallen on him. This weighs heavily on his mind. The Imperial army suffered many times more casualties than them, but having lived here for 3 years, he knows how dangerous it is to show mercy to the enemy, so he cannot feel sorry for them. He is more concerned about the future, and rightly so. Yuuya raised his head and said that the fight is not over yet. Leon agreed with him, but suggested that they celebrate this victory for now. Fortunately, they were able to capture most of the Imperial Guard's supplies. Although they would still have to be on guard, he wanted to give his men a rest tonight. Especially to the adventurers and volunteers who handled this difficult mission so well. He addressed the adventurers and volunteers and praised them for their excellent work, although they suffered the most casualties than the other units. But thanks to them, the infantry was able to fight without being separated. He thanked them again from the bottom of his heart and promised that they would be rewarded. A Cock thanked the prince and said that they still risk their lives doing any business for money. The leader of the Horn of Minotaurs expressed gratitude that the prince mourns their sacrifices. This is his choice too. Yuya wondered if he was really that obvious. He turned to His Highness and asked him to lend him 10,000 cavalry tomorrow. Leon asked what he intended to do. The young man replied that Fristel was occupied by the Imperial Guard. If they attack now, the royal subjects will suffer losses, so first they will take the imperial capital. Yuya had serious plans to attack the capital. He told Leon that he believed there were about 30,000 imperial troops in the imperial city. Most of them will be security forces with no real combat experience. He has already been to the imperial castle, so he has some idea of its structure. It appears that the empire has mobilized all available forces for this invasion. They will not be able to strengthen the defenses of the imperial city in the near future. Of course, there would be elite defenses inside the imperial city, but if the imperial army could not deploy large forces now, then he might rush inside. Yuya was firmly convinced that this was what they should do. The time has come to attack this imperial city. Leon, after thinking a little, agreed with the hero's arguments. The prince said that could work too. Then he turned to General Regin with a question about his readiness. He replied that if they separated the heavy cavalry and used only saddles, the journey to the imperial capital would take about 10 days. Luckily, they have thousands of horses captured from the Imperial Guard, so numbers won't be a problem. Now there is only one thing left to do: feed the troops. Rance suggested sending mage soldiers there who could use cumulative magic. At best, they could carry the carts, but if everyone joined, they would be able to take with them enough food for 10 days. The others should then surround Fristel. Leon asked, but then the remaining forces in Frisk would be too few. Wouldn't they be too weak to resist the Imperial Guard when they showed up? Yuya replied that of course. Even if they win, there are over 40,000 Imperial troops in Fristel. Rylia concluded that therefore they would still have a rift. And if the Empire moves from Fristel, then they, being dragons, will deal with them. Of course she wouldn't mind if they did. Leon told her that she should then join him in the siege of Fristel. He will send troops to the capital as soon as everything is ready. As for the cavalry forces sent to the capital, then he will be commander-in-chief. Yuya turned to His Highness and said that he suggested it, but it was dangerous. He agreed with the hero and said that it was so. The brother must remain here and lead the siege of Fristel. Lion said he is aware of the risks. Moreover, if they successfully capture the imperial castle, the next step will be a political move. Melchiria agreed with the prince. Yuya also does not intend to destroy the empire. Leon said they then needed someone who could make decisions on the spot, whether about post-war compensation or the conclusion of a treaty. In this case, it will be better if he goes himself, since political negotiations are difficult in Mercuria. Besides, no matter how much his little sister would like to work with Yuya, he can't let her personal feelings get in the way of his priorities. Mel indignantly asked him what he was talking about. However, the prince continued and said that he would leave the command of the troops to General Vistas, and he would follow Yuya and the others. He's not going to put himself in danger, so don't let anyone worry. Yuya thought that in case the worst happened, they would forcibly use transfer magic to bring His Highness to the kingdom. He is sure that everything will be fine with them. In the end, Leon stated that he would then start preparing tomorrow, and they would leave early the next morning. The Imperial army is holed up in Fristel, so they won't be able to detect them. It would be better if they pretended to be returning, but in reality they would create a diversion and head to the Imperial capital. Yuya thought about it. It was about an invasion that was not part of the strategy of this war. He was glad that everyone accepted it so easily, including Mel and His Highness Rian. Now they will go anywhere. Is their job too easy for the royal family? The next morning, 12,000 cavalrymen set out for the imperial capital. The rest of the army was to move to encircle Fristel as soon as they were in line. This was done so that they would not be pinched from behind when attacking the imperial city. The cavalry unit will include His Highness Prince Rian as General Vistas of the Imperial Guard as second commander, and also Bruno, Iwispo and Tia. The field forces that will go to the siege of Fristel are commanded by General Regin, Rylia and Mel. They also needed more volunteers. The remaining adventurers were to split into several small groups to search for the Imperial troops who had fled to Fristel. But somehow the Horn of the Minotaur had to travel with a cavalry detachment heading to the Empire. Yuya thought that if everything went according to plan, they should be within striking distance of the Empire. But even if it didn't happen, he was determined to make it happen. The imperial capital of the Bells Empire is the largest city in the Empire with a population of 100,000 people. This is one of the largest cities in the world. The journey from Fristel to the imperial capital takes about 20 days by ordinary cart. They rode heavily armed cavalry war horses without the weight of armor. without heavily armed knights, almost on horseback, and this was 7 days after their departure. Finally, they reached the point where they could see the streets of the imperial capital. Prince Rion stated that he never thought that they would be able to get here in just 7 days. Leon agreed with him and said that there was no better time than now. He suggested immediately attacking the enemy. The generals hastened to carry out the order of the commander-in-chief and rushed to the attack. All efforts were aimed at taking the castle. The streets of the imperial city were intended for the movement of the nobility. No civilian could pass here except through the crossroads, so there were no obstacles for the king's cavalry. Yuuya noticed that there was no sign that soldiers were waiting for them. There was no sign of the soldiers guarding the imperial city. It was strange. In addition, the castle gates were open, and Yu came up with the idea that this could be some kind of trap. Yuuya used summoning magic and summoned a shadow wolf. He ordered him to look for traps near the gate and destroy them if he found them. If there were no traps there, then he should have gone ahead and provided them with safe passage. The wolf rushed inside. Yuuya looked worriedly at the 2 guards who didn't move as the shadow wolf walked past them. Shouldn't they have raised their weapons? The hero pulled himself together and said that they shouldn't be too careful. If something goes wrong, he won't be able to deal with it on the horse. He needs to jump off her. When he passed the guards, they didn't even move. What does it mean? They calmly drove almost to the palace without encountering any resistance. Just before the palace, they saw a young man walking towards them. Yuuya looked closely at this man. Walking through the line of guards lined up at the front, this nobleman recognized the hero of Kashagi and His Royal Highness Prince Rion. Rion asked the young man how he knew them. The man apologized and said that he was the 3rd prince of the Bells Empire. His name is Lionel Leonard de Bells.